Chapter 1122. The moment the furious roar landed, a pitch-black wind dragon instantly appeared. Then, it charged at Yi Chen's back, trying to swallow him whole. Sensing something strange behind him, Yi Chen immediately turned around. The instant he saw the wind dragon, Yi Chen curled his lips in disdain. Wind dragon? I could do that too. After Yi Chen said that, he raised his left hand, and an even bigger and darker wind dragon instantly appeared and met the wind dragon that sneak attacked Yi Chen. In the next second, the two wind dragons collided. Then, the wind dragon released by Yi Chen opened its mouth and swallowed the small wind dragon. At this time, a cry of disbelief suddenly echoed. How is this possible? Hearing this, Yi Chen smiled coldly. Then, he looked directly at the person who had cried out in alarm. Nothing is impossible. Ordinary wind-type spells naturally couldn't resist the wind dragon released by the sneak attacker. But the problem was that the wind dragon released by Yi Chen wasn't an ordinary wind-type spell. To be more precise, the wind dragon released by Yi Chen looked like a wind dragon, but in fact, it was a wind dragon that contained the power of space. This kind of wind dragon was able to easily swallow the wind dragon released by the sneak attacker. The moment Yi Chen spoke, the face of the bare-chested, bald, square-faced man dressed like a monk immediately sank. At this time, the fierce beast that had lost its foreleg ran to the bald man's side and kept whimpering as if it had suffered a great grievance. When the bald man saw this, he immediately took out a pill and threw it to the fierce beast. When the fierce beast saw this, its sinister eyes lit up and it unhesitantly swallowed the pill. In the next second, a huge amount of medicinal power suddenly erupted from the fierce beast's body. Then, the fierce beast's foreleg that had disappeared without a trace actually regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. When Yi Chen saw this, he was slightly stunned. He then sized up the man and the fierce beast again. At this moment, a folklore related to the Empire of Southeast Asia surfaced in Yi Chen's mind. Could they be Sang-Shi Shun and his mount, the Blood Lion? It could really be. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the bald man who had healed his mount looked at Yi Chen with a gloomy expression. Then he shouted in a deep voice, "Stinking brat, why did you hurt my mount?" If it was before, the bald man naturally wouldn't be so friendly and wouldn't waste any words with Yi Chen. He would have just killed Yi Chen. But now, the bald man had no choice but to be amiable. That was because the wind dragon Yi Chen had casually released had swallowed up his wind dragon that contained the netherworld demonic energy. What was netherworld demonic chi? It was a special energy of the netherworld. Ordinary immortals didn't dare to provoke it. If they did, they would die. But Yi Chen had simply and crudely destroyed it. If such an existence was a simple character, then it would be strange. It was also because of this reason that the bald man asked Yi Chen in such a friendly manner. To be more precise, the bald man already had thoughts of reconciling with Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard the bald man's words, he glanced at the bald man and the fierce beast and said, "You should be grateful that I didn't kill it directly." The moment Yi Chen said this, the expression of the bald man, who originally wanted to reconcile, changed drastically. Yi Chen's tone and attitude showed that he didn't have any intention of reconciling. And what this meant was very simple. Yi Chen didn't want to talk at all. He wanted to fight to the end. Although the bald man didn't want to continue fighting with Yi Chen, who he couldn't see through, this didn't mean that he would let Yi Chen trample on his dignity and dignity. Damn it, kid, how dare you be so arrogant? Today, I, Sang-Shi, will teach you how to behave properly. After a furious roar, Sang-Shi opened his mouth and shouted, "That's right, cast beans to create soldiers." After Sang-Shi finished speaking, he immediately sprinkled a handful of beans into the sky. Then, the beans that Sang-Shi sprinkled expanded in the air, and in an instant, they turned into thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals in armor. Kill! As soon as these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals appeared, they roared and surrounded Yi Chen. Is this the legendary Sang-Shi from the Empire of Southeast Asia's folklore? Is he AF *King Joker? He's just playing house. Why is he making a fool of himself? Yi Chun sneered. He raised his left hand and clenched it. Boom! Boom! The sound of thunder shook the heavens and earth. Then, thousands of lightning bolts as thick as water tanks appeared out of thin air and blasted directly at the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. In the next second, dense explosions sounded. Boom! 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 The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals that were charging at Yi Chun were blasted apart in the blink of an eye. Then, they turned into nothingness and disappeared without a trace. Yi Chun looked at the empty sky, then looked directly at Sangshur and asked, "Brother Sangshur, what do you think? Is that all you've got?" Yi Chun's words were full of mockery. Anyone who heard it would be furious. However, after hearing Yi Chun's words, Sangshur was not angry. Instead, he laughed loudly. "Ha ha, ignorant fool. Do you think my cast beans to create soldiers is so easy to break?" Yi Chun frowned when he heard this. At this moment, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals that had been blasted into nothingness started to reappear from thin air. Then, they returned to their original appearance. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were taller than before. Their strength had also increased by a lot. What the F***CK is going on? Could it be that these heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals absorb my lightning, and that's why their strength skyrocketed? Thinking of this, Yi Chun's face suddenly darkened. Damn it, this god of the Empire of Southeast Asia really has a bunch of evil abilities. But then again, Sangshur should be in the later stage of the human immortal realm. Ha ha ha, kid. You didn't expect this, right? If you have the ability, continue to strike them with lightning. No matter how much lightning you throw at them, I'll take it all. I really have to thank you for the rapid increase in the strength of these heavenly soldiers. Ha ha. When Sangshur saw that Yi Chun was unable to break his spell, he immediately laughed mockingly. He was very proud at this moment, because Yi Chun could not do anything to him, let alone devour his heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. After Sangshur finished speaking, he pointed his right hand at Yi Chun without hesitation. In the next second, thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals charged at Yi Chun again. Seeing this, Yi Chun let out a long sigh. Not only is he a F***king retard, he's also a retard. I haven't confirmed the reason just now, but he admitted it himself. In that case, Green Lotus Sword Technique. After Yi Chun finished speaking, he used the Godslayer in his right hand as a spear instead of a sword and slashed at the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Whoosh, 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 the dense sound of something breaking through the air was instantly heard. Then, a sky full of green sword light appeared out of nowhere and slashed at the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. In the next second, the green sword rain fell. Then, thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were cut into countless pieces in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, the bodies of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals who were cut into pieces began to heal rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they were as good as new. Seeing this, Yi Chun's eyes suddenly opened wide. Damn it, how dare you mislead me? These heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals do not have souls at all. They are completely made up of energy. Otherwise, the Green Lotus Sword Technique's effect of wiping out souls would not be ineffective on them. When Sangshur saw this, he laughed even more wildly. Ha ha! Give up. Your struggle is useless. Kid, I see that you are quite capable. If you kneel down and acknowledge me as your master now, I can spare your life. After hearing Sangshur's arrogant words, Yi Chun curled his lips in disdain. Idiot. Yi Chun's reply made Sangshur's expression change abruptly. He was furious and said viciously, Kid, since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being ruthless. After Sangshur finished speaking, he raised his right hand and shouted at the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Rise! As soon as he finished speaking, the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals suddenly grew in size, and their strength increased tremendously. Kill! The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, whose strength had been greatly boosted, let out deafening roars. They turned into streaks of light and charged at Yi Chun at lightning speed. At the same time, the bloodline that had suffered a great loss under Yi Chen's hands suddenly moved. On its huge, blood-red body, an extremely violent and terrifying blood chi was oozing out. The blood chi was surging crazily around the bloodlion's body. From afar, it looked like a raging river of blood was swirling around the bloodlion. At this moment, the bloodlion opened its mouth full of fangs, and a terrifying blood-colored energy was rapidly gathering in its mouth. At this moment, the thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals' attacks had arrived. When Yi Chen saw this, he snorted and waved his right hand. A sea of fire instantly appeared and enveloped the thousands of heavenly soldiers. However, no matter how the fire burned the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, it could not kill them on the spot. To be more precise, the sea of fire not only did not cause any damage to the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, but it also made them grow bigger and bigger. Even their strength increased rapidly. Damn it, how could this King's soldiers of casting beans be so powerful? It could even absorb the fire element attacks. At this thought, Yi Chen's face darkened. At this moment, the bloodlion had finished accumulating its power. Its mouth was already full of energy. In the next moment, the bloodlion raised its huge head and shot out a terrifying blood-red beam of light from its mouth. It shot directly at Yi Chen's position at an extremely fast speed. Wherever the blood-red beam of light passed, even the space around it would distort crazily. Its power was truly heaven-defying. At this critical moment, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, whose strength had increased greatly, also attacked Yi Chen at the same time. In an instant, Yi Chen was trapped in a situation where he was attacked from both sides. Chapter 11:23. Yi Chen frowned when he saw this. Then he disappeared into the void and appeared outside the encirclement in the blink of an eye. The blood-red beam of light, which had lost its target, blasted into the celestial soldiers and celestial generals that were charging over. Instantly, it plowed a huge hole in the thousands of celestial soldiers and celestial generals. It's time to end this. As Yi Chen did not know much about the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia, he had failed several times. But because of this, Yi Chen could tell that the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals summoned by Sangshur were fake. Normal methods would not work against Sangshur's soldiers formed from beings, but abnormal methods were different. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, he raised his left hand and slapped the air. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sound of something breaking through the void was heard. Then, thousands of blue fireballs appeared out of nowhere and fell into the ranks of the heavenly soldiers. The instant the blue flames appeared, an incomparably intense explosion immediately rang out in an incomparably concentrated manner. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were engulfed by the blue fireballs and burned fiercely. If there were any beings in the Eldritch world, they would have exclaimed at this scene. The Grand Moon Primordial Flame. That's right, the blue fireballs were the Grand Moon Primordial Flame, one of the 10 most powerful flames in the Eldritch world. Not only could it burn physical objects, it could also burn energy. The thousands of seemingly indestructible heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals did not increase their strength after being burned by the Grand Moon Primordial Flame. Instead, their bodies became smaller and smaller, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into nothingness. The bloodlion, which wanted to kill Yi Chen in one blow, was unfortunately hit by the Grand Moon Primordial Flame because it could not dodge in time. Although its body was huge and it tried to extinguish the flames, it could not extinguish the Grand Moon Primordial Flame, one of the 10 most powerful flames in the Eldritch world, no matter how hard it tried. Roar! A shrill cry was heard. Then, the bloodlion, which was burned by the Grand Moon Primordial Flame, fell to the ground and started to roll around crazily. This was the bloodlion's last resort. It had tried all kinds of spells to extinguish the lunar primordial fire, but all of them had failed. When it landed on the ground, it wanted to roll around and extinguish the lunar primordial fire that was constantly burning its body and causing it unbearable pain. It had even seen death several times. However, all of this was futile. No matter how much it struggled, the lunar primordial fire burned brighter and brighter, showing no signs of being extinguished. The pungent smell of burnt flesh wafted through the air, causing the spectating players to cover their noses. Boom, boom, boom. As the bloodlions struggled madly, the ground trembled incessantly. Yichun could not help but raise his eyebrows at the bloodlion for it to be able to hold on for so long under the incessant burning of the lunar primordial fire. Oh no, how could he have the lunar primordial fire? Sang Shirshin, who was in the sky, recognized the grand moon true fire. Not only did he not help, he turned and ran. The lunar primordial fire was no joke. He had no choice but to run. He did not expect his luck to be so bad. He had just arrived in this world, and he had already met a cultivator with the lunar primordial fire. Knowing the power of the lunar primordial fire, he used all his strength to escape from this place. You want to run? It's not that easy. Sang Shirshin was related to Yi Chen's harvest. How could Yi Chen let him escape? The moment Yi Chen finished speaking, he thrust the god-slaying spear in his right hand forward without hesitation. At that moment, the space in front of the God-Slayer distorted. Then, the tip of the God-Slayer disappeared. In the next second, the space in front of the escaping Sang Shirshin suddenly distorted. Then, the black tip of the God-Slayer appeared. Sang Shirshin only cared about running for his life. Caught off guard, he crashed into the tip of the god-killing spear that came through space. Poof! With a sound, the sharp tip of the God-Slayer pierced through Sang Shirshin's chest. At the same time, the God-Slayer flashed, and the god-killing characteristic was activated. Wah! Sang Shirshin spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his expression changed drastically. You! How could you have? Obviously, Sang Shirshin recognized the origin of the God-Slayer in Yi Chen's hand. Otherwise, he would not have said that. Shock? Disbelief? Both. But more than that, there was fear and an extremely strong sense of despair. The God-Slayer, what was that? It was the famous weapon of the demon ancestor Ra. It was one of the most powerful weapons in the Eldritch world. Not only did it have the soul-devouring characteristic, it also had the god-killing characteristic. If one was stabbed by the God-Slayer, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. However, it was precisely such a domineering, innate cardinal treasure that ended up in the hands of someone who wasn't even an immortal. Furthermore, that person had even used it to attack him and even pierced through his body with a spear. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was that the god-killing characteristic of the God-Slayer was activated on his deathbed. All sorts of emotions flooded Sang Shirshin's mind. He was unwilling, he was afraid, he was angry, he was confused, he was in despair. He was usually high and mighty. Never in his dreams would he have thought that he would die in the hands of a child. Moreover, he died in such a humiliating manner. This was too unreal. It was too hard to accept. Under the effect of the God-Slayer's god-killing characteristic, his body quickly shriveled up. Finally, even his primordial spirit was devoured. Yi Chen looked at all this coldly. His heart was calm. Since he dared to provoke him, Sang Shirshin's fate was already sealed. After a few breaths, Sang Shirshin's corpse turned into dust and scattered with the wind. As Sang Shirshin's corpse disappeared, a few items fell from the sky. When Yi Chen saw this, he raised his left hand and sucked in the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After 3 sounds, 3 items instantly appeared in front of Yi Chen. Then, Yi Chen grabbed them in his hand. A storage bracelet and 2 lottery dice. After seeing the attributes of the 3 items, Yi Chen could not help but smile. Indeed, the higher the realm of the extraterritorial god, the better the items he would get. In fact, even Yi Chen did not expect that killing the human immortal Sang Shirshin would give him 2 lottery dice. Thinking of this, Yi Chen looked directly at the storage bracelet. Then, with a thought, he sent his divine sense into it. In the next second, Yi Chen's eyes widened. Holy shit. This sage god Sang's wealth was really not ordinary. It was no wonder that Yi Chen thought so. After all, Sang Shershen's storage bracelet not only contained 100,000 supreme-grade spiritual stones, but also thousands of elixirs for human immortals. There were also various elixirs for refining elixirs and refining materials. In the end, Yi Chen even found a magical elixir furnace. An elixir furnace was nothing. Yi Chen would not deliberately refine elixirs. However, Yi Chen's woman, Zhao Yu, would do so. As for the reason, it was very simple. When Zhao Yu received Yi Chen's cultivation technique, she also learned the Book of the Pill Lord. The Book of the Pill Lord recorded all kinds of elixirs, immortal elixirs, and even divine elixirs, or cultivation techniques. Therefore, Zhao Yu would naturally refine elixirs. However, Yi Chen did not have a decent elixir furnace for Zhao Yu. Now, Yi Chen got a magical elixir furnace. Naturally, he could give it to Zhao Yu. Of course, Yi Chen would not give it to Zhao Yu directly. Even if he wanted to give it to her, he would strengthen it with the cauldron of heaven and earth before giving it to her. Otherwise, it would be meaningless. After receiving Sang Shershen's wealth, Yi Chen saw that the blood lion on the ground had turned into a pile of charcoal. He smiled and raised his left hand. Then, a suction force appeared in the air. After 3 whooshing sounds, 3 items flew directly into Yi Chen's hands. One of the 3 items was a Demon King's monster core. Then, there were 2 lottery dice. Seeing this, Yi Chen's mood suddenly became very good. Damn, although the lottery dice were not as good as the lottery now, when he reached a higher level, the power of this thing would not be any worse than the lottery. To be more precise, it would be better than the lottery, especially after he reached the Tao realm with strength. Using this thing, thinking of this, Yi Chen could not help but smile. At this moment, a world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Player Yi Chen has killed 2 human immortal extraterritorial gods. Special reward. Innate attribute points x 100,000 points. Heaven and Earth Providence x 20 million points. Supreme Grade Spirit Stones x 200,000 pieces. Innate Merit x 20 million points. The world announcement repeated 3 times. After being slightly stunned, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. Damn, I've earned big this time. Just the innate attribute points alone were 100,000 points, and the Heaven and Earth Providence X actually obtained 20 million points? Could it be that killing a human immortal extraterritorial god in this mission would give him 10 million Providence X points? 200,000 Supreme Grade Spirit Stones. And the most ridiculous thing was the innate Merit X, which actually gave him 20 million points. Needless to say, killing a human immortal would give him 10 million innate Merit X points. Looking at this huge reward, Yi Chen's eyes lit up with excitement. At this moment, a notification sounded in Yi Chen's mind. Ding! Number of invading deities eliminated. 6. The final reward for the deity invasion mission will be based on the number and level of the deities killed. Please continue to work hard and keep up the good work. Hearing this pleasant notification, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. Damn, there's more. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the world announcement, which had just paused for a moment, suddenly became noisy. What? He killed another 2 extraterritorial gods, and they were in the human immortal realm? Yi Yu of Gojoseon is too awesome. Can any of you tell me what the human immortal realm is? How come I've never heard of it before? Sigh, I really want to know too. How am I supposed to know? Don't worry about it. Anyway, it's definitely much, much higher than us. I guess we won't have the chance to reach it in this lifetime. Did you notice that after Yi Yu of Gojoseon killed that human and that beast, he seemed to have obtained something amazing from their corpses? Yeah, I saw it too, but it was too small. I didn't see what it was. Chapter 1124. What's the use of seeing it clearly? All we could do is look at it enviously. It's best if we don't look at it. Otherwise, we'll be traumatized. Yes, you're right. But I can't help but look. On the ground, the Western players, who stretched as far as the eye could see, were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred because of Yi Qin's bountiful harvest. As the saying goes, wealth moves people's hearts. It was not that these people did not think of taking Yi Qin's huge gains for themselves. However, Yi Qin's strength was there for all to see. No matter what they thought, no matter how much they desired, they had no choice but to forcefully suppress the desires in their hearts. What's there to be proud of? Sooner or later, I'll surpass Yi Qin. That's right. I don't believe that he has 3 heads and 6 arms. How can he always be so lucky? How can he always be ahead of all the players? Just wait and see. The Luo denomination will definitely not let this person continue to be so arrogant. His hard days are coming. I hope so. Otherwise, the Western continent will welcome a catastrophe. Empire of Southeast Asia, Yin City, Mulberry Hill City, Imperial Palace. Thesos the Great was sitting on the tall throne, listening to the minister's report. At this moment, a cultured minister of etiquette was reporting to him about the summoning of the deities. Reporting to the great emperor, the summoning of the deities was very successful. We've summoned a total of 18 deities. Apart from the 6 deities that were not summoned successfully, the other 12 deities were all successful. They've now arrived at Yin City and are ready to fight for us at any time. The minister had never thought that the 6 gods that he said didn't come had already become ghosts under Yi Qin's saber. After listening to the report, Thesos the Great nodded in satisfaction and said, "Thank you for your hard work. How many resources did you use to summon the deities this time?" Reporting to the great emperor, all the spiritual stones, gold, and treasures in the national treasury have been used up for the summoning of the deities this time. All the livestock in the city have also been slaughtered. If we want to summon the deities again, we'll probably have to perform a human sacrifice. At this point, the minister of etiquette's voice became softer and softer. Thesos the Great nodded thoughtfully. Although he was pained by the loss of his wealth, he felt much better when he thought about the fact that he had summoned 12 gods. As the saying goes, where there's life, there's hope. As long as they could destroy Yi Qin and his army, their sacrifices would be worth it. After all, he could earn more money, but he only had one life. He understood this simple logic. After coming back to his senses, the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia spoke again. Now that there are 12 gods guarding the capital of the Empire of Southeast Asia, I think it should be foolproof. I think no matter how strong Yi Qin is, he can't fight against the joint attack of 12 gods, right? As soon as the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia finished speaking, a thin and weak general immediately stood up and responded. The great emperor is right, but in my humble opinion, you overestimate Yi Qin. Why do we need 12 gods to deal with him? In my opinion, any one of them would be able to kill Yi Qin. He's just a little grasshopper. How can he overturn the sky in front of a tiger or a leopard? That's right, that's right. I think that Yi Qin will definitely suffer a crushing defeat and lose his life. We can use his corpse to achieve the great emperor's great cause. A civil official of the Empire of Southeast Asia nodded in agreement when he heard this. A general with a full beard and 3 scars on his forehead snorted coldly and then shouted, Yi Qin is just a pig. He could be arrogant before because he didn't meet our great emperor. This time, our Mulberry Hill City will be Yi Qin's burial ground. As soon as the general's words fell, it instantly attracted a chorus of praise. Haha, that's right. This kid is too arrogant. He's either destroying this or destroying that every day. Today, we'll let him have a taste of destruction. Well said. This time, we'll let the whole world see that our Empire of Southeast Asia is the most powerful country on earth. Because of the appearance of the gods, the officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia were full of courage. They said all kinds of arrogant words one after another, as if Yi Qin was a soft persimmon that could be crushed at will and anyone could easily crush him. The Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Thesos the Great, was quickly infected by the high morale of the officials. After laughing, he asked, "Dear officials, since we already have an absolute advantage, who is willing to take the lead and lead the troops out of the city to meet the enemy? Your humble subject is willing. Your humble subject is willing. Your humble subject is willing." As soon as the words were spoken, the generals in the imperial court all volunteered to fight for the position of the vanguard general. When the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Thesos the Great, saw this, he nodded his head in satisfaction. However, Thesos the Great did not immediately decide to enter the city. Instead, after a long discussion with the officials, he decided to send a highly respected old general to lead 10 million natives and 5 million players out of the city to meet the enemy. In order to ensure that nothing goes wrong, he also sent a newly summoned god to this army. After killing Sang Shurjin, Yi Chun gave the order, and the 2 million soldiers of Reincarnation Immortal City immediately marched towards Sanguchio City of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Rumble. Tens of thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The 10 armies merged into a torrent of steel and rolled forward like a river. Their invincible aura shocked the heavens and earth and made the gods cry. The tens of millions of Eastern players and the players who were teleported from all over the world were shocked by the invincible defense force in front of them. This was especially true for the players from the Western countries. They could tell that the Reincarnation Immortal City's army was the strongest defense force that they had ever seen. The neat formation, high morale, and the determination on the soldiers' faces incessantly stimulated the nerves of every Western player. At this moment, they could feel the threat of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army. What would happen if Yi Chun used this defense force to attack their own countries? All the Western players were praying in their hearts. Please don't let this happen. Just as the Reincarnation Immortal City's army was about to reach Sanguchio City, Yi Chun, who was guarding the Reincarnation Immortal City, realized that there was a huge army of the Empire of Southeast Asia blocking the path of his army. This defense force was the vanguard army that Thesos the Great had sent out from the Empire of Southeast Asia. The entire army was made up of 10 million natives and 5 million players. It was more than 6 times the size of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army. The marshal of the vanguard army was Zagusos, a veteran who had been through hundreds of battles. The old general was standing at the forefront of the vanguard army. He was very proud and full of pride. He firmly believed that today, the vanguard army that he was leading would create a miraculous achievement that would last for eternity. As for himself, he would be recorded in the annals of history forever, and his name would be immortalized for generations to come. He firmly believed that today, he would lead the warriors under his command and annihilate all the enemies that came to invade his country. At this moment, he could almost see the enemies trembling in front of him, kneeling down and begging for mercy behind him in a massive army of over 10 million natives and players. Every soldier listened to the rules of war with excitement. High fighting spirit. Chapter 1125. A reward of 100 gold coins for each enemy killed. A reward of 1 low-grade spiritual stone for every 10 enemies killed. A promotion to a 10-man commander. A reward of 1 mid-grade spiritual stone for every 20 enemies killed. A promotion to a 100-man commander. A reward of 10 mid-grade spiritual stones for every 50 enemies killed. A promotion to a 1,000-man commander. A reward of 100 hectares of fertile land. A title of warrior. A reward of 1 high-grade spiritual stone for every 100 enemies killed. A promotion to a 10,000-man commander. A reward of 1,000 hectares of fertile land. A mansion in a prefecture, and 100 male and female slaves. A personal audience with the emperor and a title of hero. The encouraging voice of the Empire of Southeast Asia's herald echoed in the Empire of Southeast Asia's army. The soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia's army, who were originally excited because of the sure victory battle, couldn't help but reveal a fanatical look when they heard the encouraging voice of the herald. There was no possibility of losing a battle with a god in charge. This was a recognized fact of all the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Since it was a sure victory battle, the rewards after the battle were inevitable. No one disliked such a result, and no one was excited. It could be said that the native soldiers and players in the Empire of Southeast Asia's army were all thinking about one thing. That was, which level of reward would they receive? And this was also the reason why the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were so excited. If there was anything to blame, it was the war reward this time. It was so generous that it made them feel unreal. However, such a reward came from the Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia. None of the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia thought it was fake. After all, that was the Emperor. Whatever he said was the truth. There couldn't be any falsehood. Therefore, the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia's army all thought that this reward was real. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so excited. In fact, neither the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia nor the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia knew that the current Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia was extremely poor. To be more precise, all the supplies in the palace of the Empire of Southeast Asia had disappeared because of the summoning of the gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Even if the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia won, they would not be able to get a single tongzi as a reward. Unfortunately, only the Emperor and the high-ranking officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia knew about this. Everyone else was kept in the dark. Otherwise, the natives and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia wouldn't be so excited. Of course, that was not important. What was important was that the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who had been caught in a frenzy and thought that victory was right in front of their eyes, had no idea that what was waiting for them was a road of death that led to an abyss. Woo! A strong gust of wind swept across the battlefield. It blew past Zagusos's face and fluttered his long, curly hair. The sudden gust of wind blew the sparse trees on the ground, and the dark clouds in the sky were blown over. Zagusos looked up at the sky with great ambition. At this moment, a drop of water fell from the sky and hit Zagusos's forehead. Kaboom! Kaboom! The dull sound of thunder suddenly came from the clouds and exploded the oppressive atmosphere in the sky. Zagusos raised his hand to wipe the water off his forehead and frowned slightly. Rainy days were not good for marching and fighting. Otherwise, Zagusos wouldn't have frowned. Kaboom! Kaboom! The oppressive and scalp-numbing sound of thunder resounded once again. At the same time, a thick bolt of lightning appeared from the dark clouds and lit up the sky. At this moment, the army of the reincarnation immortal city suddenly appeared in the distance under the illumination of the lightning and rushed over. Seeing the army of the reincarnation immortal city, Zagusos was slightly stunned. Then his eyes widened. In the next second, Zagusos raised his right hand and shouted, "The 1st Cavalry Legion, 13th Cavalry Legion, 8th Cavalry Legion, 28th Cavalry Legion, and 39th Cavalry Legion, as the first attack echelon, attack now." Woo! The low and long sound of the bugle horn sounded instantly following Zagusos's order. In the blink of an eye, it spread across the entire battlefield. At this moment, all the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were filled with fighting spirit. Kaboom! Kaboom! A thunderous boom resounded through the sky, causing the air to hum. Suddenly, a thunderous sound rang out. Whoosh! Heavy rain poured down instantly. The dense raindrops instantly hit the armor of the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Dong! 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 The sound of marching war drums followed closely behind. In the next second, the native generals of the Empire of Southeast Asia pulled out their weapons and roared. Kill! 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 Frenzied cheers were heard as the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Continent charged towards the army of reincarnation immortal city like a pack of ferocious wolves. Rumble! Rumble! Tens of thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia, whose morale was already high, was boosted again. At the location of the army of the reincarnation immortal city, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, and the other generals were stunned when they saw the unusually high morale of the Empire of Southeast Asia. When they came back to their senses, they looked at each other. In the next second, Zhang Fei, who had the most explosive temper, shouted, "Who's first?" As soon as Zhang Fei finished his words, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba smiled and shouted, "Together! Good! Let's kill these arrogant barbarians." Zhang Fei waved the snake spear in his right hand and shouted, "Kill them all!" Li Yuanba's hammers collided, and after a muffled dong sound, he opened his mouth and shouted, "Kill!" Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba raised their weapons and shouted. In the next second, a roar that shook the heavens and the earth was heard. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" The 241 million soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City raised their weapons and shouted. At this moment, the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City exploded with a strong killing intent and a bloodthirsty aura that chilled one's soul. At the same time, the dark clouds above the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City suddenly turned red and then scarlet. This would only happen when the killing intent was extremely strong. For the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City, they had never lost to any defense organization in the mortal world and would never lose to them. This was because the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City was an invincible army made of flesh and blood. When the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City released their aura, the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who were full of morale, were stunned. At this moment, the morale of the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia dropped by a lot. Is it a blood cloud? What a terrifying killing intent. How could Yi Qin's defense organization have such a terrifying killing intent? How many people have they killed? Damn it, why do I have a feeling of extreme danger? Me too. The generals of the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia expressed their fear one after another. Although they knew that there was a deity behind them, even so, they still felt uneasy instead of confident. The reason was simple. The killing intent of the Reincarnation Immortal City was too terrifying. In fact, the generals and soldiers of the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not know that the Reincarnation Immortal City had the Azure Dragon Formation, Vermilion Bird Formation, and White Tiger Formation. They also did not know that the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City were equipped with spiritual artifacts. Moreover, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, and the other generals had Dharma artifacts with them. If they knew, they would be terrified even if they knew that the deity of the Empire of Southeast Asia was behind them. This was because if the deity did not intervene, they would all be killed. Of course, the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not know this. Even so, they were frightened by the terrifying killing intent of the Reincarnation Immortal City. Rumble. Tens of thousands of horses galloped, and the earth rumbled. The Reincarnation Immortal City's army followed closely behind Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, and the other generals. They activated the charge mode and increased their speed. They were as swift as the wind, as slow as the forest, as aggressive as the fire, as immovable as the mountain, as unpredictable as the dark, and as swift as the thunder. The top army techniques of the mortal world were cast on the Reincarnation Immortal City's army. At this moment, the morale of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army skyrocketed. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, and the other generals sensed that the Reincarnation Immortal City's army had been boosted by the top army techniques. They pointed their weapons at the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia and shouted, "Kill all of them! Kill all of them! Leave no one alive! Kill! Kill! Kill!" The earth-shattering roar of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army was heard again. At this moment, the hearts of the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who were also charging toward the Reincarnation Immortal City's army, started to beat violently. Panic and fear involuntarily appeared in the hearts of all the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia. After a few breaths, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba, who were leading the charge, met the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia. At this moment, the weapons in the hands of Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba lit up with dazzling green light. Then they swung their weapons fiercely. Buzz, 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 violent explosions sounded in the air. Then, tens of thousands of green sword radiances appeared and slashed mercilessly at the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Is this his sword radiance? Why? They are not using long swords. A native general of the Empire of Southeast Asia saw this, and his eyes narrowed. Then he screamed. Just as the native general of the Empire of the Southeast had said, the green light was a sword light that could only be emitted by a long sword. At first glance, it was hard to believe. However, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Huang Zhong all cultivated the chaotic level green lotus sword technique. With the green lotus sword technique, there were no restrictions on weapons at all. To be more precise, no matter what weapons Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei used, they could release the sword chi, sword radiance, sword realm, or sword realm that the green lotus sword technique should have with the support of the green lotus sword technique. Of course, it was undeniable that the power of the green lotus sword technique would be reduced correspondingly. However, this was not a big deal at this moment. Because even so, the attacks of Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, and Guan Yu could kill all the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia in front of them in an instant. As soon as the native general of the Empire of Southeast Asia finished his words, the sound of bodies being cut apart instantly rang out. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Tens of thousands of native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia and their war horses were cut into pieces in the blink of an eye. At this moment, scarlet blood spurted out and sprinkled all over the sky. The native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia that were charging toward the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City were directly torn apart, leaving a huge gap in their ranks. When the cavalries charged, they competed on courage, strength, and skills. Of course, it also depended on the quality of their equipment and their war horses. In addition to these, the most important thing was to see who could cut out the weakness of the opponent's army. What Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei were doing at this moment was to cut out this weakness so that the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City could charge more easily and kill the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia. The attacks of Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei were brutal and terrifying. Before the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia could recover from their shock, a rain of arrows suddenly rose from the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City and fell rapidly toward the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After the dense sound of arrows piercing through the air, the sound of arrows piercing through bodies was heard. Poochie, poochie, poochie. In the blink of an eye, the cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia were shot down. The entire area where the cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia were located was instantly emptied out. In the next second, extremely shrill screams suddenly sounded from the battlefield. These native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia had never experienced the means of the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City before. Now, they had experienced it. However, they couldn't accept this result when they were alive. Of course, apart from being unable to accept it, they were also filled with fear. A round of arrow rain had caused such heavy casualties. How many more rounds of arrow rain would there be? Just as the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia were terrified and even hoped that the gods behind them would intervene, the rain of arrows from the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City rose again and shot rapidly toward the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The dense sound of bodies being pierced sounded again. Then, the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia were wiped out again. Shrill screams of agony sounded again on the battlefield. Disbelief, disbelief, and even more fear were the thoughts of the remaining native cavalries of the Southeast continent at this moment. Heavy rain poured down and blood splattered everywhere. Blood and rainwater mixed in the mud and dyed the entire ground red. Speed up and charge over. The generals of the Empire of Southeast Asia looked at the approaching army of the Reincarnation Immortal City with pale faces and shouted sternly. They had to get close to the army of the reincarnation immortal city as soon as possible. This was the only way to avoid being shot down by the army of the reincarnation immortal city. Of course, they had thought of using bows to fight back. Unfortunately, they were not equipped with bows and arrows. So how could they fight back with bows and arrows? Rumble. Tens of thousands of horses galloped, and the ground rumbled. Even though the army of the reincarnation immortal city had used arrows, they didn't slow down their charging speed. Therefore, the distance between the two defense forces was rapidly closing. After a few breaths, the army of the reincarnation immortal city collided with the remaining native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Bam, bam, bam. After a series of violent collisions, the native cavalries of the Empire of Southeast Asia were sent flying in batches. Then, they were pierced by rows of shining spears in the air. At this moment, blood splattered everywhere and scattered across the sky. The miserable screams of the war horses and the native cavalries of the southeast continent added a gorgeous and bloody accompaniment to this tragic and bloody scene. They couldn't win in a fight. They couldn't ram into the enemy. The cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia was thrown off their horses and suffered heavy losses. Rumble. Tens of thousands of horses galloped, and the ground rumbled. The reincarnation immortal city's army was still charging forward. The cavalrymen of the Southeast Continent Empire, who were killed at the beginning, were trampled into meat paste by the war horses of the reincarnation immortal city. Even the war horses of the reincarnation immortal city were no exception. Rumble. Lightning kept exploding in the sky, and the flashing electric light made the entire battlefield even more terrifying. The wind howled and the rain poured down. The killing continued without a moment's pause. Chapter 11:26. The native cavalrymen of the Empire of Southeast Asia were killed in droves. No matter how they resisted, screamed, cursed, or even knelt down to surrender, they could not stop the army of the reincarnation immortal city. Broken limbs flew in the air, and round heads danced in the wind. On the ground, the path of blood and flesh mixed with the mud became longer and wider. The strong smell of blood mixed with the smell of death filled the entire battlefield. Primitive, barbaric, bloody, and violent. This was war. It was either you die or I live. There was no other way. However, the scale of victory was completely on the side of the reincarnation immortal city. Rumble. Tens of thousands of horses galloped, and the ground rumbled. The army of the reincarnation immortal city charged again and again. Wherever they passed, no one could stop them. No one dared to stop them. The violent and invincible aura and the majestic appearance of sweeping away everything made the blood of the Eastern players boil, and they all cheered. Waha, this is so King satisfying. Kill all these mongrel monkeys of the Empire of Southeast Asia. The defense organization of the reincarnation immortal city is awesome. They can suppress the enemy with 2 million soldiers against 15 million soldiers. Yu of Gojosian is going against the heavens. Yu of Gojosian, I'm convinced. You my idol. Quickly kill the mongrels of the Southeast continent and avenge us. A small empire of Southeast Asia dares to challenge the Yu of Gojosian of the East? I'll kill you in minutes. Let's see if you still dare to show off. Monkeys of the Southeast continent, are you scared now? Come out and show off again? Why aren't you showing off anymore? Idiots of the Southeast continent, how dare you capture us Eastern people as slaves? This time, I'll let you have a taste of being destroyed. You'll never be able to rise again. Long live Yu of Gojosian. I love you so much. Yu of Gojosian, I want to give birth to your children. Yu of Gojosian, I want to be your slave. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were agitated by the comments that the Eastern players posted on the World Channel because of the bloody violence and invincibility of the army of the reincarnation immortal city. For a moment, the Empire of Southeast Asia players, with the exception of those who were on the battlefield, began to curse back. Damn pigs, you want to destroy us? Wait for your next life. Fat pig, don't be delusional. We'll kill Yi-chun right away for you to see. CK. Are all pigs having epilepsy? You want to exterminate us with this little bit of strength? Or a frog at the bottom of a well? That's right. Our empire of Southeast Asia hasn't even used 10% of our strength. And these idiots think they're going to win. That's hilarious. No matter how much the Eastern players and Empire of Southeast Asia players cursed at each other, the Western players who were watching the battle could see everything clearly. The army of the Reincarnation Immortal City had the absolute advantage on the battlefield, and the defense organization of the Empire of Southeast Asia could only be described as weak. Looking at the equipment and weapons of the Reincarnation Immortal City soldiers, their terrifying combat strength, and their sky-piercing killing intent, every Western player had a gloomy expression on their face. They had no choice but to do so. The army of the Reincarnation Immortal City was too powerful, so powerful that it was beyond their imagination. In the Battle of the Cavalry, the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City was obviously outnumbered. However, it was still one-sided under such circumstances. Most importantly, no matter how the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City charged and fought, none of them died. In fact, none of them were even injured. What did this mean? It was very simple. The combat strength and defense of the Reincarnation Immortal City had severely exceeded their limits. Otherwise, such a situation would not have happened. If it were the Eastern players, they would naturally not be worried because of this. After all, regardless of whether the Eastern players accepted their fate or not, they had already accepted the fact that the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City was an invincible defense organization. They had also accepted the fact that Yi Chun was the strongest and unstoppable. This was referring to the Eastern players. If it were the Western players, the outcome would be different. After all, Yi Chun had participated in the World War, and his battle achievements were too terrifying. Since the start of the World War, Yi Chun had consecutively destroyed 4 countries, and he was still continuing. If Yi Chun did not stop after destroying the Empire of Southeast Asia and unifying the Central Continent, the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City would directly target the gaming area of the Western Continent. If such a situation really happened, based on the strength of the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City, none of the empires in the Western Continent could compete with Yi Chun's army of the Reincarnation Immortal City. After that, the country they were in would most likely be destroyed as well. Such an outcome was not what the Western players wanted to see. Of course, this was also what they were worried about. It was also because of this reason that the Western players, who were teleported to the battlefield of the Empire of Southeast Asia because of the special plot mission Invasion of the Deities, looked very gloomy. They had no choice. If Yi Chun really continued to command the army of the Western Continent after destroying the Empire of Southeast Asia, none of the empires in the Western Continent could compete with Yi Chun. This was not the assumption of the Western Continent players. It was a conclusion that they had come to in the depths of their hearts. If they had to blame someone, they could only blame the combat strength of the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City. After a short period of silence, the Western players who were watching the battle of the Reincarnation Immortal City could not help but whisper among themselves. Yi Chun's army of the Reincarnation Immortal City is really too strong. Moreover, it's ridiculously strong. How did Yi Chun create such an invincible defense organization? It doesn't matter how he did it. What's important is that Yi Chun's strength is a threat to us, who are on the other side of the world. That's true. Think about it. If the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City attacks our empires, what would the outcome be? Tisk, you're right. Regardless of whether Yi Chun will attack the Western Continent or not, we have to be prepared in advance. Otherwise, I'll go back and report this immediately so that the players in our country can be prepared as soon as possible. I'll go back too. This matter can't be delayed. I hope Yi Chun will stop here. Don't pin your hopes on the mercy of the enemy. This kind of thinking is very foolish. While the Western players were discussing the combat strength of the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City, the commander-in-chief of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Zagusos, was in a bad mood when he saw his troops being slaughtered by the enemy. In his opinion, it was not difficult to deal with Yi Chun and Yi Chun's army, because they had the support of a deity. Unfortunately, the cruel reality clearly told him one thing. The deity that they relied on still had not made a move. Should he ask the deity to make a move? Zagusos had thought about it, but he did not dare and could not do so. What were the deities? They were high and mighty and omnipotent. No matter how high Zagusos' status was, he was just an ant in the eyes of the deities. If he really asked the deities to make a move, he would most likely be executed by the deities. The deities did not care about his status or whether he had military power or not. If he, Zagusos, angered the deities who had not made a move for some unknown reason, there would only be one outcome, and that was death. If a mortal dared to question the deities and ask for help from a deity who obviously had other plans, he would be courting death. This was the reason why Zagusos did not dare to make a move even though he wanted to. Instead, he asked the deities behind him to make a move. Seeing the horsemen under his command being slaughtered more and more miserably, Zagusos' remorse grew stronger and stronger. It was only now that he understood why the reincarnation of Mortal City's army was rumored to be invincible. If he had known that this would be the outcome, he would not have agreed to lead the troops in a battle so hastily. However, now that things had come to this, there was no use in regretting. He only had one choice now, and that was to do his best to win this war in order to save his own life. Thinking of this, Zagusos spat out a mouthful of saliva and then shouted, "All troops attack!" Zagusos did not know why the deities behind him did not make a move, but he had no other choice now. He could only stake everything on this one throw. This was the only way that the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia summoned by the Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia would not choose to watch from the sidelines. Instead, they would make a move directly. As soon as Zagusos gave the order, the arrogant troops of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who were afraid of the reincarnation in Mortal City's army, began to restrain themselves and charged toward the army of the reincarnation in Mortal City. At this moment, the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia, which stretched as far as the eye could see, moved like a tide. Unfortunately, their speed was pathetically slow. This was because they were afraid of the tyrannical army of the reincarnation in Mortal City. At the same time, their deities had not made a move until now. This naturally made them suspicious. However, no matter how they deliberately slowed down, the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia still did not make a move. Moreover, the army of the reincarnation of Mortal City did not change or waver because of their participation. After 10 minutes, the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia came into contact with the army of the reincarnation in Mortal City. Unfortunately, even so, the army of the Empire of Southeast Asia was still at a disadvantage on the battlefield. The cavalrymen who had just entered the battlefield were slaughtered the moment they came into contact with the army of the reincarnation in Mortal City. None of the cavalrymen of the Empire of Southeast Asia could last more than one round in the face of the ferocious attack of the army of the reincarnation in Mortal City. Like dumplings being dropped into a pot, they fell off their horses in the blood-red light brought about by the war sabers. As for their war horses, they were either directly chopped into two halves, trampled into meat paste by the rampaging reincarnation in Mortal City soldiers, or forcibly sent flying. After that, they screamed miserably and died in midair. The bloody and tyrannical scene played out again. Groups of soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were slaughtered and turned into corpses that covered the land of the Empire of Southeast Asia. The blood-red road that was formed by the blood and flesh mixed with the soil became longer and longer. The smell of blood became more intense and surged on the battlefield. Soon, the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were slaughtered to the point that they were terrified. Not long after, the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia who were not injured involuntarily had the thought of retreating and leaving the battlefield as far as possible. Then, they put their thoughts into action. Unfortunately, the cavalry charge was not something that could be stopped or retreated at will. Moreover, the troops at the back did not know the situation at the front. They continued to charge forward and push the soldiers at the front row forward. There was no way to retreat at all. Gradually, Despair appeared in the hearts of the native soldiers and players of the Empire of Southeast Asia. This made them choose to fight with their lives on the line. Since they were going to die anyway, they might as well kill a few of them before they died. That would be worth it. Unfortunately, no matter how hard they fought, it was futile because they could not do anything to the army of the reincarnation Immortal City. Poochie, 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 bam, bam, bam. The sound of sharp weapons piercing into bodies, the clashing of war horses, and the screams of the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia resounded throughout the battlefield. The soldiers of the reincarnation Immortal City were holding sharp spears that were dripping with blood. They raised their spears and stabbed out again and again, reaping the lives of their enemies without a single moment of rest. Fresh blood and rain dyed the muddy ground red. It was a ghastly sight. Kill. Although the army of the reincarnation Immortal City was facing the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia, their charging speed did not slow down at all. They continued to trample over the bodies of their enemies. None of the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia could escape from their invincible charge. Wherever the iron hooves of the reincarnation Immortal City's army passed, the ground was covered in blood and mud. At this moment, the army of the reincarnation Immortal City was like an ancient, ferocious beast that kept devouring the lives of its enemies. They chewed and tore the cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia into pieces. The war horses neighed in agony, and broken limbs flew everywhere. The cavalry at the front fell, but the cavalry at the back took their place. The army of the reincarnation Immortal City was like a meat grinder that never stopped. They shredded the defense forces of the Empire of Southeast Asia into pieces. Spears flashed and swords flashed. The soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia who were charging forward were dismembered one by one in despair. Although they suffered heavy casualties, none of them retreated. This was because they could not retreat at all. When more than 10 million people were attacking at the same time, the best outcome for them was to be trampled into meat paste by the war horses of their comrades behind them. Due to the heavy rain, the visibility on the battlefield was very low. The soldiers could only see things 10 meters away at most. Therefore, the attacking troops at the back did not know that their allies in front were being slaughtered by the army of the reincarnation Immortal City. By the time they reached the front, it was already too late for them to retreat. Splat, 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 the killing continued. During the battle, the reincarnation Immortal City's soldiers' spiritual weapon spears pierced through the enemy's armor effortlessly. In the next moment, blood splattered everywhere. The cavalry of the Empire of Southeast Asia screamed in agony and died one after another. Chapter 11:27. A high-intensity battle could only last for a short period of time. Towards the end, even the strongest defense force would be exhausted. However, the army of the reincarnation Immortal City was an exception. This was because the charging speed and killing speed of the reincarnation Immortal City's army didn't slow down at all. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the allied army of the Empire of Southeast natives and players had mostly been killed. The remaining players of the Empire of Southeast were no longer as arrogant as before. Their faces were either pale or trembling. The natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia couldn't get detailed information through the World Channel. However, the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia could do that. Therefore, even though the heavy rain affected their vision, all the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia who were on the battlefield knew about the strength and brutality of the reincarnation Immortal City's army. Of course, they didn't believe it at first. However, as more and more players revealed the strength and brutality of the reincarnation Immortal City's army, the remaining players of the Empire of Southeast Asia couldn't help but believe it. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia who believed it were overwhelmed by shock, fear, and hatred. They were shocked by the strength of the reincarnation Immortal City's army, terrified by the brutality of the reincarnation Immortal City's army, and resented the absence of the godly beings who accompanied the army. With such thoughts, the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia couldn't continue fighting. The players couldn't abide by the military rules like the natives. Therefore, when they realized that they had a chance to escape, they started running away without hesitation. No one could stop them. The commander of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Zagusos, was on the verge of despair. Seeing his army being slaughtered, hearing the deafening sound of horse hooves getting closer and closer, and feeling the stench of blood in the air, he looked up at the sky and pleaded with tears in his eyes. "Great God Tatina, do you want to see your people being trampled on by outsiders? Your devout servant begs you to show up and save your people." Tatina was the god that Thesos the Great had sent out to fight alongside him. Although Zagusos had never dared to ask this so-called god, he had no choice but to do so now. Because if they didn't ask for help from the gods, everyone would die, and they would die very miserably and thoroughly. As soon as Zagusos sent out his request, the dark clouds in the sky immediately dispersed. In an instant, the weather turned from gloomy to sunny. At this moment, everyone present realized that as the dark clouds dispersed, tens of thousands of rays of light suddenly descended from the sky. At the same time, a goddess radiating dazzling golden light slowly descended from the sky. As soon as the goddess appeared, the fleeing Empire of Southeast Asia players stopped in their tracks. Then, they knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Great goddess Tatina is here. Let's see if those pigs dare to be arrogant again. Ha! Asterisk, 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 pigs. Your end is here. Wah! With Goddess Tina's help, these pigs will definitely die without a burial ground. Huh. The sudden appearance of Goddess Tatina made all the Southeast Continent players forget about their previous hatred and become excited. The biggest reason why they were so arrogant was because they had the support of the god of the Empire of Southeast Asia. However, the god did not make a move, which was unacceptable to them. Otherwise, they would not have harbored such hatred in their hearts. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that their god had appeared. This way, they would be killed in a frenzy. Then, there would be a 180-degree reversal. As they kowtowed to Tatina, they clamored in the world channel as if victory was already in their hands. Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, Huang Zhong, Dian Wei, and the other generals who were chasing after the Empire of Southeast Asia players saw this strange phenomenon in the sky. In order to avoid unnecessary losses, they immediately ordered their troops to stop attacking. At this time, the god in the sky, who was called Goddess Tatina by the Southeast Continent players, was looking down at the army of the reincarnation immortal city with a look of disdain. "How dare you kill my people in front of me? You can all go to hell." As soon as Tatina finished speaking, she took out a bottle. However, before she could do anything, Yi Qin's voice suddenly appeared behind her. "Your courage is commendable." The sudden voice surprised Tatina. She hurriedly turned around and looked at Yi Qin. However, when she saw Yi Qin's appearance and cultivation level clearly, her nervous mood immediately relaxed. Yi Qin only appeared to be at the peak of the crossing calamity stage. Although he was only one step away from becoming an immortal, it was not worth mentioning in her eyes. Her arrogance and prejudice had affected Tatina. She had forgotten how Yi Qin had appeared and how he had appeared without a trace. In the next second, Tatina said arrogantly, "Who are you? Tell me your name. I don't kill nameless people." When Yi Qin heard this, he glanced at Tatina and shouted, "What are you doing? How dare a god like you be so arrogant?" Tatina did not expect that a cultivator at the crossing calamity stage would be so disrespectful to her. She was so angry that she wanted to die. "Boy, you're courting death." In a fit of rage, she immediately pointed the bottle at Yi Qin and shouted, "Collect!" As soon as Tatina finished speaking, a huge suction force appeared and enveloped Yi Qin. Yi Qin, who noticed this, was slightly stunned. Then he curled his lips in disdain. Damn it, if it was the purple gourd in the hands of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, I might be worried. Damn it, how dare a broken bottle try to scare me? How ignorant and fearless. Thinking of this, Yi Qin coldly smiled and then shouted, "What? Die!" As soon as Yi Qin finished speaking, the God-Slayer in his right hand shot out instantly. Boom! As the god-killing spear pierced out, The air instantly exploded. Then, an extremely strong aura of destruction suddenly erupted from the god-killing spear. At this moment, Tatana's eyes lit up. Then, she looked straight at the God-Slayer. This is a treasure, and it's a top-grade treasure. As soon as Tatana thought of this, she pointed the bottle at the God-Slayer without hesitation. Tatana's bottle had the ability to collect other people's weapons. It was her specialty. In the past, countless opponents had been defeated by her because of this. At this moment, Tatana, who had already noticed that the God-Slayer in Yi Chen's hand was not simple, obviously wanted to take away Yi Chen's weapon. It could be said that Tatana's idea was very good. Unfortunately, she ignored the grade of the God-Slayer and Yi Chen's abnormal strength. No matter how Tatana activated the bottle, the rapidly approaching God-Slayer did not shrink. Instead, it grew bigger and bigger. In the next second, the black and thick God-Slayer directly pierced the bottle's mouth. With a loud bang, Tatana's vase shattered into pieces that flew all over the place. Pucci, the God-Slayer that broke the bottle, effortlessly pierced through Tatana's heart. How could this be? Tatana's eyes were filled with disbelief. The God-Slayer flashed and instantly swallowed Tatana's soul. When Yi Chen saw this, he curled his lips in disdain. With a flick of the god-slaying spear in his right hand, Tatana's body exploded in midair. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered all over the sky and fell to the ground. Looking at the pieces of flesh and blood falling to the ground, Yi Chen curled his lips in disdain. Then he raised his hand and grabbed the 2 lottery dice and a storage ring that fell to the ground. Chapter 1128. Yi Chen couldn't help but smirk as he glanced at the lottery die in his hand. This thing would become more valuable in the later stages, and it was 100% the items that could be drawn from the lottery die were related to the user's realm. To be more precise, the higher the realm of the user, the higher the level of the prize. There wouldn't be a situation where a low-level item could be drawn from an ordinary lottery draw. At first glance, it seemed a little useless, and there was no need to value it so much. After all, one had to have a high enough realm to draw something good. The time needed to reach a high enough realm wasn't something that could be achieved in a few hundred or a few thousand years. Although that was the truth, one couldn't forget what world Yi Chen was ascending to. In the primordial world, the highest grade of item was undoubtedly a Chaos Supreme Treasure. For example, the Pangu Axe was a Chaos Supreme Treasure. Although the Pangu Axe had been shattered, its grade as a Chaos Supreme Treasure was real. If Yi Chen could draw the Pangu Axe, needless to say, it would be the strongest killing weapon in the primordial world. Even Han Jun would be afraid of Yi Chen. One had to know that Pangu had used the Pangu Axe to split open the chaos. If Yi Chen really drew the Pangu Axe and struck Han Jun with it, Han Jun would be crippled even if he didn't die. This was the reason why Yi Chen wanted the Pangu Axe. Of course, the Pangu Axe wasn't the only Chaos Supreme Treasure in the primordial world. Apart from the Pangu Axe, there was also the Chaos Green Lotus, the Creation Jade Butterfly, and the Chaos Bead. Although the first 3 were shattered, their grade as Chaos Supreme Treasures was real, and there wasn't the slightest bit of falsehood. As for whether there were other Chaos Supreme Treasures besides these 4, Yi Chen wasn't sure. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that one couldn't rely on ordinary means to obtain any Chaos Supreme Treasure. In order to obtain them, apart from continuously accumulating lottery draws like Yi Chen had done before and waiting for a big lottery draw, when there were enough chances, the only other method was to rely on the lottery die. Of course, Yi Chen wasn't sure if he could obtain these items in the end. After all, both of them were lottery draws, and lottery draws meant the unknown. However, if he wanted to obtain chaos treasures such as the Pangu Axe and the Chaos Lotus, there were only 2 methods. The former required Yi Chen to constantly accumulate lottery chances, while the latter required Yi Chen to attain his Tao. No matter which one it was, the outcome was still unknown. However, even if the outcome was unknown, there was still a chance to draw it. It was also for this reason that Yi Chen placed so much importance on the lottery dice. After all, it was Yi Qin's chance to obtain a chaos treasure. In terms of probability, the probability of Yi Qin obtaining a chaos cardinal treasure was much higher. Although Yi Qin had to attain the Tao to do that, and Yi Qin would definitely not be afraid of Hong Jun or the heavenly Tao after attaining the Tao. The problem was that the heavenly Tao would not be afraid of Yi Qin. This was because Yi Qin did not have a chaos treasure that could threaten the heavenly Tao. Otherwise, Yi Qin wouldn't have been able to accumulate the number of times he could draw the lottery again and again. Moreover, he wouldn't have been so excited after seeing the lottery dice. He hoped that he could get his hands on the Pango axe. If he could really get his hands on it, TSK. Just as Yi Qin thought of this, the world announcement suddenly sounded. Ding! Player Yi Qin has killed 2 extraterritorial deities of the human immortal realm. Special reward: X 50,000 innate attribute points. X ** heaven and earth providence points. X 100,000 supreme grade spirit stones. X ** innate merit points. The world announcement repeated 3 times. At the same time, the system notification sounded in Yi Qin's ears. Ding! Number of invading deities eliminated: 7. The final reward for the deity invasion mission will be based on the number and level of the deities killed. Please continue to work hard. As soon as the system notification ended, the already lively world channel exploded again. Holy sh**t! Holy sh**t! This is too fast. How long has it been? Another invading deity has been killed by Yi Qin? It's not just fast, it's abnormal. Mother Fasters Kerr, I'm getting more and more confused now. Are these shitty gods of the Southeast Empire made of paper? Why are they dying one after another in Yi Qin's hands? They're just a bunch of trash, shitty shit. F****k. The Empire of Southeast Asia's trashy deities might as well be killed by us. This way, we can still remember their kindness. Monkey Li Siete, if the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia hear what you just said, you will be killed. What are you afraid of? They're just a bunch of trashy deities. If they dare to attack us, God will let them know what judgment is. What judgment is. Damn it. Now I just want to know how to stop Yi Qin from getting more benefits. The foreign players were discussing intensely because Yi Qin had easily killed the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia again. However, they were immediately suppressed by the shouts of the Eastern players. Stupid foreign devils, let me tell you something. Your god, the god of light, has been swallowed by Yi Yu of Gojoseon. What god? In front of Yi Yu of Gojoseon, he is just an ordinary deity. What are you shouting for? You want to stop Yi Yu of Gojoseon from getting more benefits? Are you still asleep? Even if you have 10,000 more chances, you won't be able to stop Yi Yu of Gojoseon even once. That's right, Yi Yu of Gojoseon is the most powerful deity. There is no other. Why bother with these foreign devils? It won't be long before Big Boss Yi Qin enters the Western continent and sweeps through the entire Western continent. When that happens, these idiots will cry. You're wrong. These idiots will cry, but it's useless no matter how much they cry, because Yi Yu of Gojoseon will kill them all. The world channel was in an uproar. On the other hand, on the battlefield of the Empire of Southeast Asia, the Empire of Southeast Asia players who had been watching the battle were all stunned when they saw this scene. They had hoped that God Tataina would avenge them and vent their anger. Then, they would kill Yi Qin to vent their hatred. But who would have thought that their god Tataina would be so weak? Due to the sudden turn of events, Tataina's death was a little too quick for a moment. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all dumbfounded. General Zaguso's face was filled with disbelief. God Tataina was his last pillar of support. The biggest reason why he dared to be the vanguard this time was because he had God Tataina's support. However, even she was killed now, Zaguso's had completely fallen into despair. Oh my God. Does God really want to destroy the Empire of Southeast Asia? Zaguso's roared angrily at the sky. At this moment, he was filled with anger, hatred, fear, and despair. After living for so long, he was used to seeing life and death. However, he didn't want to see his country destroyed just like that. He couldn't accept the cruel reality before him. Who can save us? Save the empire of Southeast Asia. At this moment, as if the heavens had heard his request, a thunderous voice suddenly came from the horizon. Who are you? How dare you come to the empire of Southeast Asia and cause trouble? As soon as the voice came out, 3 people could be seen flying over from the distant sky. The 3 of them were very fast. They arrived in front of Yi Chun almost instantly. As soon as they appeared, the despairing empire of Southeast Asia players were stunned. Then their eyes lit up. The next second, all the empire of Southeast Asia players knelt on the ground and worshipped the sky excitedly. Look, it's God Dusha, God Jaguras, and God Bonjina. We're saved this time. Yeah, the 3 of them are here. No matter how powerful Yi Chun is, he'll definitely die today. Wahaha pigs, did you see that? Today is the day Yi Chun dies. Oof. Without Yi Chun, let's see how you pigs can still be so arrogant. Tremble, pigs, the empire of Southeast Asia's revenge is about to begin. Ha ha! The shouts of the players from the empire of the southeastern continent were filled with excitement. However, in the ears of the players for the eastern continent, their shouts were laughable and foolish. F***CK. These idiots from the southeast continent are so stupid. They're hopeless, sigh. You can't blame them. They're frogs at the bottom of a well. They've seen too little. Damn it. So what if there are 3 more? Aren't they just sending food to us? Yu of Gojosian is going to be rich again. Yeah, Yu of Gojosian killed so many extraterrestrial gods in this mission. How many good things will be dropped? I'm envious just looking at them. Yu of Gojosian, go for it. Kill these Southeast continent idiots. Yu of Gojosian, I love you. I'll always support you. Due to the excited reactions of the empire of Southeast Asia players, the Eastern players discussed fervently. Meanwhile, General Zigasos, who had been heartbroken and had nothing left to live for, went into a frenzy. At this moment, he knelt on the ground and continuously kowtowed in the direction of the 3 gods. As he kowtowed, his pious cries, filled with excitement, could be heard. Thank the heavens. Thank the 3 great gods for their timely rescue. The heavens didn't destroy the empire of Southeast Asia. In the sky, the 3 so-called gods that had just appeared nodded at the spiritual apostles in satisfaction after hearing the cries of the empire of Southeast Asia players and natives. Then, they looked at Yi Chun in unison. In the next second, a male god pointed at Yi Chun with one hand and shouted in a deep voice, "Evildoer, why aren't you coming to accept your death?" The one who spoke was God Dusha. Among the 3 gods, his temper was the worst, and his methods were the cruelest. Countless enemies and believers had died at his hands, and every person he killed had their skin flayed and their souls extracted. After hearing Dusha's words, Yi Chun glanced at Dusha and curled his lips in disdain. Idiot, who gave you the courage? As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, a domineering imperial aura instantly rose. At this moment, a dragon's roar that shook the 9 heavens sounded directly behind Yi Chun. Then, tens of thousands of golden rays lit up behind Yi Chun. When the 3 gods of the empire of Southeast Asia saw this, their eyes constricted and they shouted in shock, fate transforming into a dragon. The changes in Yi Chun's body were the signs of fate transforming into a dragon. And to be able to do this, he was either the ruler of a country or had a huge amount of fate chi of heaven and earth. Yi Chun was not the ruler of the Great Han Dynasty yet. Therefore, the result was self-evident. Yi Chun had a huge amount of fate chi of heaven and earth. If it were someone else, they might not feel anything, but the 3 gods of the empire of Southeast Asia knew what it meant to have a huge amount of fate chi of heaven and earth. To be precise, Yi Chun, who had a huge amount of fate chi of heaven and earth, was the darling of this world, the son of fate. It was useless to kill such an existence, even if they were gods. This was because the whole world would bless Yi Chun with all kinds of opportunities and luck. This alone made it difficult for them to kill Yi Chun. In addition, Yi Chun was at the peak of the crossing calamity stage. It was basically impossible for them to kill Yi Chun. This was the reason why the three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia were shocked when they realized that Yi Chun was the son of fate. After all, going against the son of fate was equivalent to going against the world where the son of fate lived. And for the three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia who were summoned, this was the last thing they wanted to see. It was true that they were immortals, but they were low-level immortals. They did not have the ability to go against a world with such a low level. As soon as the three of them finished speaking, Yi Chun sneered coldly and shouted, "That's right. Why don't you kneel when you see me?" Kneel! The three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who had just been shocked by the changes in Yi Chun's body, suddenly changed their expressions when they heard this. They were shocked because Yi Chun was not an emperor, but he could transform his fate into a dragon. However, they were not really afraid of Yi Chun because of this. After a short moment of shock, Dusha flew into a rage. "Damn mortal, you're still so stubborn even when you're about to die. Today, I'll teach you how to write the word death." As soon as Dusha finished speaking, his right hand slapped toward Yi Chun in the void. Heaven-covering palm. In the next second, a huge palm suddenly appeared in the sky and slapped toward Yi Chun. At this moment, the clouds surged and the air surged. When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled coldly and asked, "What are you doing? Is that all you've got?" After Yi Chun finished speaking, he waved his left hand in the void. An even bigger and clearer giant palm suddenly appeared and slapped toward the huge palm released by Dusha. At this moment, the sound of thunder rumbled and a strong wind blew. In the next second, the two palms met and then exploded. Boom! After a loud explosion, the heaven-covering palm released by Dusha instantly exploded and dissipated in the hurricane created by the collision of the two palms. Seeing this, Dusha's eyes suddenly narrowed, and then he shouted in shock, "This is impossible!" The heaven-covering palm was his specialty. It was a tried and tested technique for killing enemies. In order to quickly kill Yi Chun just now, he had already used all his strength. However, in the end, his specialty had been shattered by a casual wave of the hand of the mortal he thought to be. What the hell was going on? Thinking of this, Dusha looked directly at his two equally shocked companions and said, "This kid is not easy to deal with. The two of you, this brat is not easy to deal with. The three of us should attack together and take him down quickly." When Jigulas and Bonjina heard this, they immediately nodded in agreement and replied, "That's right. Okay, let's attack together." Chapter 1129. As soon as the three Empire of Southeast Asia gods finished speaking, the other two gods did not hesitate to use their special skills. They cooperated with Dusha and attacked Yi Chun together. In an instant, Jigulas transformed into a huge python with 4 limbs and punched at Yi Chun. Star Destroyer Punch. As Jigulas roared, an explosive fist intent that seemed to be able to penetrate heaven and earth suddenly appeared and attacked Yi Chun. At the same time, Bonjina also summoned her origin scimitar and attacked Yi Chun. "Kid, take my blood arc blade." Under her control, the blood-red scimitar suddenly turned into a dazzling red arc of light. It traversed the void at incredible speed and appeared directly behind Yi Chun. Obviously, Bonjina's attack had a speed attribute. Otherwise, it would not have been so fast. In fact, she had used this move to kill her enemies every time. Until now, no one had been able to escape from her blood arc blade with the spatial ability. "Kid, this is what you get for being so arrogant." Seeing that her attack was about to succeed, Bonjina's arrogant lips curled up slightly, and a rare smile appeared on her face. At the same time, Dusha's heaven-shrouding palm once again slammed down on Yi Chun's head. "Go to hell, country bumpkin." The three of them attacked Yi Chun from 3 different directions at the same time. Their divine senses were firmly locked onto Yi Chun, not giving Yi Chun a chance to dodge at all. This was because they were very clear about one thing. As the son of Providence, if they could not kill Yi Chun in one fell swoop, it would be difficult to kill Yi Chun again. On the ground, the Eastern players who had been watching the sky suddenly widened their eyes. F***CK. These three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia are as sinister, despicable, and shameless as the stupid monkeys of the Empire of Southeast Asia. They actually joined forces to attack boss Yi Chun. Yi Yu of Gojoseon won't be killed, right? A female player from the East gulped and said worriedly, "Shut up." He had to have faith in Yi Yu of Gojoseon. When have you ever seen Yi Yu of Gojoseon lose? That's right. Yi Yu of Gojoseon is a man who even dares to mess with the God of Light. Even if there are three of them, there's nothing to worry about. I have no choice but to be worried. If Yi Yu of Gojoseon fails, then these three gods will attack us Eastern players. If they attack us, we won't be able to stop them. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, you have to hold on. You mustn't lose. Don't worry too much. I believe that Yi Yu of Gojoseon will definitely crush these three immortals. While the Eastern players were discussing, the reactions of the Southeastern players were the complete opposite. Ha ha ha. Yi Chun is finished this time. Three great gods, quickly kill Yi Chun. King Pigs, stop dreaming. Yi Chun, I'll see how you die this time. Best Spiritual Stones. X 300 million pieces. Innate Merit Points. X 300 billion points. At the same time, a prompt sounded in Yi Chun's mind. Ding. Current number of invading deities destroyed. 10. The final reward for the deity invasion mission will be determined by the number and level of the deities killed. Please continue to work hard and keep up the good work. Such a generous reward left Yi Chun dumbfounded. The innate attribute points were rewarded with 300,000. Providence value, X 30 million. The best spiritual stones were rewarded with 300 million. The most exaggerated one was the innate merit points, which were 300 billion. Yi Chun couldn't believe his ears right now. This level of reward was simply too exaggerated. Damn, I like the reward of this plot mission. But then again, if the Empire of Southeast Asia hadn't summoned a large number of deities, such a reward wouldn't have appeared at the thought of this. Yi Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Damn, I wonder how many immortals the Empire of Southeast Asia has summoned. If there are more, that would be awesome. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, the World Channel, which had been temporarily stagnant because of the world announcement of Yi Chun killing three gods, exploded. Where are those idiots from the Southeast continent? Why are they mute? Weren't they very arrogant just now? Look at your bird deities, they're just trash in front of boss Yi Chun. That's right, those monkeys were still acting tough just now. Why are they so quiet now? Could it be that they're scared to death? I kind of hope that those idiots from the Southeast continent can summon more immortals. I didn't get enough of them just now, so brother, great minds think alike. If boss Yi Chun can kill 1,000 more bird deities, that would be awesome. Kill them until they don't dare to log into the game anymore. Damn, did you notice that Yi Yu of Gojoseon seems to have killed deities of a higher stage this time? Nonsense. The Earth Celestial stage, the world announcement has already stated that who knows how powerful an Earth Celestial stage is? Seeking pictures, seeking the truth. I'm here in the Empire of Southeast Asia. I've already recorded the video of Yi Yu of Gojoseon's battle, just now. If you need it, I'll give you 10 billion gold coins. Damn, 10 billion gold coins? You black-hearted coward. Why don't you go rob a bank? If you don't want to buy it, get lost. This is the price, no bargaining. Poor people, please take a detour. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, give me a chance, I'll bear your children. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, I love you. Chapter 1130. The World Channel was in an uproar. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all stunned. They couldn't help but be stunned. Those were the high and mighty gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. How could they be so easily killed by Yu of Beach and Yi Chun of the Great Han Empire so easily? Was this a joke? Or was this bullsh***? They didn't want to believe this outcome, but the reality was so cruel that they had no choice but to accept it. They had been arrogant just now, but now they were being slapped in the face by Yi Chun. The oppressive feeling brought about by this contrast made all the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia shut their mouths. No one stood out to show off or explain anything. If there was a crack in the ground, they would have jumped in immediately. It couldn't be helped. This outcome was too embarrassing. It was a huge embarrassment. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were like this. The hopeful Marshal Zagussos was no exception. To be more precise, great Marshal Zagussos fell from heaven to hell once again. It could be said that he never thought that the three gods of the Empire of the Southeast, whom he had high hopes for, would be so easily defeated by Yi Chun. Damn, those were gods. They weren't cabbages that could be sliced into pieces. But the result was really like this. The three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia were sliced into pieces by Yu of Beech and Yi Chun of the Great Han Empire like cabbages. Moreover, they were sliced into pieces so crudely that not even a scrap was left. After being stunned for a moment, Marshal Zagussos' eyes were filled with madness. In the next second, Marshal Zagussos looked at the sky and roared crazily. Why? Why is this happening? Who can tell me why this is happening? General Zagussos was a loyal subject of the Empire of Southeast Asia. He didn't want to see the Empire of Southeast Asia destroyed. However, no matter how much he didn't want to, the feeling that the Empire of Southeast Asia was about to perish still appeared in his heart and took root directly in the depths of his soul. It couldn't be helped. The performance of Yu of Beech and Yi Chun of the Great Han Empire was simply too valiant and too monstrous. What the F***CK? Killing three deities in such a simple and violent manner? Is he even human? It was impossible. Since he wasn't human, then there was only one answer, and that was Yu of Beech. Yi Chun of the Great Han Empire was also a god, and an existence that far surpassed the gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Otherwise, how could Yi Chun kill three gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia so easily? Such an outcome was undoubtedly a super freezing agent for Marshal Zagussos. It instantly froze his heart and even his soul. His heart and even his soul couldn't warm up anymore. To be more precise, he couldn't see his own future, let alone the future of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Just as the Eastern and foreign players were discussing Yi Chun's simple and violent battle, the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were collectively silent, and the natives were dumbfounded and even in despair. 8 figures suddenly flew over from afar. Among the 8 people, there were men and women, old and young, and all of them were filled with murderous intent. When they saw Yi Chun, they immediately surrounded him from 8 directions. Looking at their unfriendly manner, it was obvious that these 8 people were the gods summoned by the Empire of Southeast Asia. When the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia saw these 8 people, they immediately snapped out of their daze. Then, their sadness turned into joy, and they laughed and provoked the Eastern players again. Ha ha! Look, it's the 8 overgods. It's the 8 overgods. This time, the Empire of Southeast Asia is saved. Great. This is great. With the 8 overgods here, Yi Chun won't live past today, haha. Pigs, look at the sky. Our 8 overgods are all here. They'll cut that pretentious Yi Chun into pieces and burn his bones to ashes. Fear, pigs. Tremble, you filthy pigs. I told you the Empire of Southeast Asia wouldn't be destroyed so easily. With the 8 overgods here, even the king of birds will have to kneel down. Pigs, come kneel down in front of me. I'll give you a slave quota. Hurry up. There'll be no quota if you're late. What? The 8 overgods are here. Pigs are all dead. Ha ha. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not know how many gods the Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia had summoned. Otherwise, they would not have collectively remained silent because of the death of 3 gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Now, the appearance of the so-called 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia gave them a shot of confidence. Damn it, 8 overgods, and all of them were here. No matter how strong Yi Chun was, he would still be killed in the end. This was what the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were thinking. It was also the source of their arrogance. Unfortunately, what the players of the Empire of the Southeastern continent did not know was that the 8 overgods that they thought of were mere overgods. Compared to the real overgods, there was a huge gap between them and the real overgods. If these so-called 8 overgods were placed in the Eldritch world, they would be like garbage bugs. There were countless existences that could kill them. Unfortunately, the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not know this fact. If they knew, they would immediately realize that Yi Chun, the world's #1 player, was not someone the so-called 8 overgods could compete with. This was the case even if Yi Chun had not passed the tribulation to become a deity. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were extremely excited because of the appearance of the 8 overgods. However, the commander of the army, Zagusos, was not happy at all. Although the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia believed that the 8 overgods were very strong, Zagusos, who had noticed something unusual about Yi Chun, did not think so. This was because the speed at which Yi Chun had violently killed the 3 gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia was too fast, and the process was too simple and too violent. Even if Yi Chun was surrounded by the 8 overgods, he would not be injured, let alone killed. As for why Zagusos thought so, it was because he was very familiar with the 8 overgods. They were God Snusen, God Nakura, God Abiha, God Kiruka, God Lightop Vala, God Kovarna, God Gasanua, and God Zabiga. To be more precise, Zagusos knew that the 8 overgods were not much stronger than the 3 gods that Yi Chun had killed. Because of this, even when he saw the 8 overgods, Zagusos did not immediately get excited like the players of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Of course, even so, Zagusos did not have much hope for the 8 overgods. In the depths of his heart, he was still hoping for a miracle to happen. After all, if a miracle happened, the Empire of Southeast Asia would be saved. If there was no miracle, then there was only one outcome for the Empire of Southeast Asia. That was the destruction of the country. Looking at the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Zagusos kept praying, 8 overgods, please kill Yi Chun. Please do not fail. God bless. In the sky, looking at the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia that suddenly flew over and surrounded him, Yi Chun could not help but raise his eyebrows. F***, there's still 8 of them. This time, my harvest is going to soar again. If this was before Yi Chun had obtained the dark yellow heaven and earth exquisite pagoda and the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, Yi Chun might have been cautious when dealing with the special characters that had reached the immortal realm or the gods that had been summoned. But now, Yi Chun did not have to worry about these. This was because Yi Chun's innate golden body of merit was enough to ensure that Yi Chun's physical body would not be destroyed. If he had the dark yellow heaven and earth exquisite pagoda and the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, Yi Chun's defense would be unbreakable in the beginner's area. Even the gods that had been summoned were no exception. This was the source of Yi Chun's confidence. It was also the source of Yi Chun's excitement when he heard about the special storyline mission, Invasion of the Gods. F***. Other people might not be able to participate in such a mission, but Yi Chun could. Other people might not be able to deal with the invading gods, but Yi Chun could. As long as there were enough invading gods, the benefits that Yi Chun could obtain would also soar rapidly. How could Yi Chun not be happy to receive such benefits for free? To Yi Chun, the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, or rather, the 8 overgods, were just here to give him benefits. Moreover, they were the stupid kind. How could Yi Chun not like such existences? Just as Yi Chun thought of this, the short and fat Schneiderson of the 8 overgods looked straight at Yi Chun and shouted, "Kid, you can't run away. Brat, you can't run anymore. If you surrender now, we can spare your life." In response to his idiotic clamor, Yi Chun immediately sneered indifferently, as if he was looking at a group of dead people. In the next second, Yi Chun asked calmly, "Tell me, how do you want to die?" Although Yi Chun's words were ordinary, they contained boundless and brutal killing intent, as well as powerful and merciless mockery. "Damn it, I gave you face, but you didn't take it. Today, I'll let you have a taste of what it's like to live a life worse than death." Schneiderson was so humiliated by Yi Chun that he flew into a rage. He immediately attacked. A huge mountain suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, with an extremely heavy aura, it directly crashed towards Yichun. At the same time, Schneiderson shouted sternly, "Damned ant, this is what you get for offending this over-god." When Yichun heard this, he curled his lips in disdain. Then, with a thought, the space in front of him suddenly distorted. At this moment, the huge mountain directly descended. Then, it rushed into the distorted space and disappeared without a trace. How can this be? Schneiderson was stunned when he saw the huge mountain disappear without any warning. His mouth opened so wide that a rubber ball could be stuffed into it. In the next second, Schneiderson suddenly thought of something. Then he saw his eyes suddenly shrink. Oh no, he has the power of space. Let's attack together. We can't let him escape. After coming to his senses, Schneiderson immediately organized the 8 of them to attack together. They wanted to kill Yichun as quickly as possible. When the other 7 heard his warning, they immediately surrounded Yichun. Nukira, who had the power of space, instantly used her ability to seal space. At the same time, she laughed loudly and mocked. "Damn mortal, let's see how you use your power of space this time." Seal space. As soon as she used her ability, Yichun immediately sensed that the surrounding space was sealed. All space-type spells could not be used. Seeing that her ability was effective, Nukira immediately showed a smug look. Once again, she used her strongest attack on Yichun. Space Fission Wave. In an instant, an attack that distorted space tore through the surrounding void and flew toward Yichun at high speed. Wherever it passed, it left a terrifying spatial dent. Meanwhile, Choyuruka waved a huge machete that flashed with rolling thunder. An endless stream of extremely violent thunder-destructive power erupted as she used her strongest attack on Yichun. Rumble. Violent thunder roared incessantly. The sky and earth within thousands of miles trembled and shook continuously. Kid, die. Violent thunder, heavenly punishment. This attack gathered all of his strength. Countless flashing thunderbolts gathered in midair to form a lightning spear. Extremely domineering thunderbolts constantly overflowed around the spear, shattering the surrounding void. Crack! Crack! The next moment, the lightning spear kept exploding. It instantly traversed the sky and attacked Yi Chen's vital parts at an unbelievable speed. Its terrifying power made one tremble in fear. Seeing that her attack was about to succeed, Choyuruka's leopard eyes flashed with a cunning light. Chapter 1131. Clearly, Choyuruka thought that Yichun would not be able to dodge her attack. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a look in her eyes. At the same time, Choyuruka shouted, "Starry River Descent." As soon as Choyuruka finished speaking, a long river full of stars appeared behind her. Her slender body was instantly covered in a layer of dazzling starlight. At this moment, an ethereal and sacred aura erupted from Choyuruka's body. In order to kill Yichun in one blow, she had already used her trump card. Her flesh and blood turned completely transparent in the blink of an eye. Her meridians were sparkling and translucent, as if they were carved out of rare crystals. This strange and mysterious power combined with the vast starry river to form a huge river of stars. Choyuruka was the brightest pearl in the starry river. The moment the transformation occurred, the stars in the starry river began to rise into the sky and emit extremely mysterious, destructive ripples. This was Choyuruka's trump card. She had used this ability to kill countless experts of the same level. And now, Choyuruka was using this ability on Yichun. "Go to hell, thief!" Choyuruka shouted angrily. The countless stars that rose into the sky instantly turned into meteors and crashed down on Yichun. At the same time, a bloody light full of evil aura erupted from Arbiha, one of the 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Demon Bloodlust Art. As soon as Arbiha's words fell, Gulyalu sounds rang out in an instant. Countless crimson blood vessels suddenly appeared under Arbiha's skin, and then they quickly swam. At this moment, Arbiha, who was originally burly, immediately turned into a skinny and senile old man. At the same time, an even more violent and evil aura erupted from Arbiha's body. Along with the eruption of Arbiha's aura was the intense bloody light on Arbiha's body. Kakik, little bastard, let's see how long you can be so arrogant. Give me your life. Just as he finished speaking, countless blood-red vortexes appeared in the sky that was originally occupied by all kinds of magic. Then, those blood-red vortexes flew straight towards Ichun. Azure Dragon Heaven-shaking fist. At this moment, the Bal Vala had also used his famous consummate skill. An incomparably violent energy instantly shattered the surrounding space, after which it blasted towards Yi Chun in an extremely barbaric manner. This was an extremely tyrannical punch that relied purely on the strength of his physical body. Normally, if he used this move, it would be more than enough to kill an expert of the same level. And today, I will teach you how to behave. Rumble. Another loud noise came from the sky, and the invincible fist arrived in an instant. Seeing that Yi Chun was about to die under his fist, the bald Vala licked his lips cruelly. 9 Heavens Roaming Dragon Sword. Once the Sword Cultivator Goa God Sword technique was used, the sword beam covered the sky in an instant, and the momentum was like a rainbow. In the sky, a faintly discernible sword intent pierced through the air, tearing the sky apart. Mortal, to be able to die under my sword is your fortune from 8 lifetimes of hard work. The ethereal sword technique, coupled with Goa's momentum, looked like he had a card up his sleeve. This technique was imbued with the highest level of swordsmanship. Ever since he had mastered it, he had never met a worthy opponent. Using it on Yi Chun today was like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Die. Seeing that Yi Chun was about to die under his sword, Garua let out a rare smile. Give me your life. Sabaga's divine lightsaber technique was extremely powerful and as fast as a shooting star. Now that he had used all his strength, the sky was instantly filled with endless saber light. Sabaga's extraordinary saber was being used to its fullest potential. At the same time, Sabaga's violent aura exploded. From afar, he looked like an unparalleled elite. Die, you piece of shit. Sabaga slashed with his saber, and the sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling could be heard. At this moment, Schneiderson had also unleashed his strongest technique. Rainbow Divine Light Palm. He slammed his palm forward, and a gigantic palm glowing with rainbow light appeared in the sky. This huge palm exploded with great power in the air, and as it flew, it caused the space to tremble continuously. Ha ha ha, mortal, you will die today. The gigantic 5-colored hand that blotted out the sky and shone with dazzling divine light instantly slammed down with an extremely powerful aura. All 8 of them attacked at the same time. On the ground, the Eastern players looked up at the sky. After seeing the effects of the 8 Overgod's attacks, their eyes widened and their jaws dropped. What the F***CK is this? Why do I feel like it's the end of the world? F***CK. These 8 Empire of Southeast Asia's deities seem to be stronger than the previous 3. And they're so shameless. They're attacking boss Yi Chun together. There's only one thing I want to know. Can Yi Yu of Gojoseon survive this attack? I think so. Yi Yu of Gojoseon has destroyed many Empire of Southeast Asia's deities. I'm not sure. I hope Yi Yu of Gojoseon can survive this. Otherwise, the Great Han Empire is going to suffer. The Eastern players knew that Yi Chun was strong, but after seeing the attacks of the 8 overgods from the Empire of Southeast Asia, they were not so sure anymore. This was because the attacks of the 8 overgods from the Empire of Southeast Asia were terrifying. At the location of the Empire of Southeast Asia's army, seeing that Yi Chun was about to be engulfed by the attacks of the 8 overgods, the eyes of the Empire of Southeast Asia's players lit up, and they cheered loudly. Ha ha! The 8 overgods are invincible. This time, Yi Chun is going to die for sure. Hee hee, wait a minute. I'm going to chop all of Yi Chun's soldiers into minced meat. That's right. Yi Chun is a player. He can revive after death, but his soldiers can't. At the location of the foreign player army. God, please protect the miscellaneous deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Kill Yi Chun. Yi Chun can't be left alive. Hee hee, Prince Yu of Han, Yi Chun is going to die for sure this time. In the sky, Yi Chun glanced at the attacks of the 8 overgods from the Empire of Southeast Asia and smiled coldly. Then, with a thought, the 12 lotus leaves of the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, the Khanate cardinal treasure under his feet instantly surrounded Yi Chun and enveloped him. Boom, 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 crack, boom, boom, boom. All kinds of explosions shook the heavens and the earth. The space around Yi Chun, who was enveloped by the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, trembled violently. Then, all 6 colors of light covered the entire sky. The light dissipated and the sky returned to normal. Yi Chun, who was enveloped by the leaves of the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, appeared in the sky unscathed. Seeing this result, the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all stunned. Then their eyes widened instantly. How is this possible? How can this be? This is impossible. How can he be fine? The 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia never dreamed that their combined strongest attack could not even hurt Yi Chun's little finger. After a brief moment of shock, a scream suddenly rang out. The black lotus under his feet is at least a divine artifact. No, it's at least an acquired spiritual treasure. When Yi Chun, who was standing on the grade 12 black lotus of destruction, heard this, he glanced at the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, whose faces were full of shock and disbelief. Then he said, "Have you guys had enough? It's my turn to attack, right?" As soon as Yi Chun's words fell, the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all stunned. Then, their faces suddenly changed. They had no choice but to react this way. Their combined attack could not hurt Yi Chun at all. Then, what the hell was the point of continuing the fight? What high and mighty, what immortals could easily obliterate mortals? For them, all of this had disappeared without a trace. The next second, the 8 overgods of the Empire of Southeast Asia turned around and fled without hesitation. That was called straightforward. What face? What continuing to attack Yi Chun? All of this was nonsense. Now, there was only one thing they wanted to do the most, and that was to get as far away as possible from Yi Chun, this mortal who was so abnormal that they began to fear him. Otherwise, they were likely to be killed simply and crudely, just like those gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia who had been killed by Yi Chun before. After all, they could not break Yi Chun's defense, but Yi Chun could break the defense of the gods. In fact, they clearly knew that Yi Chun had already killed a batch of gods. Yet, they still came over in order to obtain the treasures on Yi Chun's body. In their opinion, Yi Chun must have treasures on him for him to be able to do this. Otherwise, such a situation would not have happened. However, the cruel reality clearly told them one thing. That was, the treasures on Yi Chun's body were not only powerful in terms of offense, but their defensive capabilities were also ridiculously strong. Therefore, they had no choice but to run. Since you're already here, you still want to run? When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled coldly. Then, he raised his left hand and flicked his fingers. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After 8 whooshing sounds, 8 balls of Grand Sun Primordial Flame appeared directly. Then, they escaped into the void and disappeared. In the next second, the 8 gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia who had just escaped for 2 seconds froze. At this moment, 8 balls of Grand Sun Primordial Flame appeared directly from the void and crashed into them. Boom, boom, boom. Then, there was a violent explosion. Then, they saw that the 8 gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia were directly set ablaze by one of the 10 most powerful flames of the Eldritch Land, the Grand Sun Primordial Flame. In the next second, An extremely mournful howl followed closely behind. Ouch, what did it feel like to be burned by the grand sun, primordial flame? Very simple, death. At this moment, the 8 gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who were directly set ablaze by the grand sun, primordial flame, felt the same way. That was because the power of the grand sun, primordial flame, was too crazy. It was so crazy that they could not put out the flames on their bodies no matter how hard they tried. Moreover, their physical bodies and immortal souls were being destroyed rapidly. There was only one outcome that could lead to such a situation, and that was death. Chapter 11:32. In the sky, Yichen looked at the Empire of Southeast Asia's 8 main gods, who were being mercilessly burned by the sun's primordial fire. No matter who it was, Yichen would only choose one way to deal with them if they dared to stand in his way, and that was to kill them without mercy. Even if it was a deity blocking his way, there would be no exception. At the location of the Eastern players' army, the Eastern players were shocked to see that Yi Chun was unscathed and that Yi Chun's simple and crude methods had made the 8 main gods cry for their parents. The Eastern players immediately came back to their senses after hearing the screams of the 8 main gods. Then there was an uproar. F***CK. F***CK. I knew it. Yi Yu of Gojoseon is invincible. What do you think? Do you believe me now? F***CK. I have to say I was really shocked by the attack of the 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Hee, they're just good-looking but useless main gods. What's there to be afraid of? That's true. The Empire of Southeast Asia is just a country formed by a bunch of barbarians. No matter how strong their deities are, how strong can they be? TSK, you're the only ones who aren't firm on your stance. Look at me, I never thought that Boss Yichun would lose. When I think about how Boss Yichun swallowed the right hand of the God of Light, I firmly believe that these team main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia are just a bunch of ants in front of Boss Yichun. He can easily crush them. Look, this is the result. The 8 main gods' combined attack is useless. At the location of the Empire of Southeast Asia's army. How can this be? How can this be? Those are the 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. How can this be? F***CK. Yi Chun is cheating. He must be cheating. Otherwise, how can he kill the deities? And the deities are 8 main gods. That's right. Yi Chun cheated. Only cheating can explain how Yi Chun was able to kill god spirits. Shameless, cheating pig. The players of the Empire of Southeast Asia were cursing and shouting crazily. They were unwilling to believe such an outcome. Unfortunately, this was the outcome. Yi Chun had brutally killed the so-called 8 over-gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia. At the location of the foreign player army, the endless sea of foreign players stared at Yi Chun in shock, their long hair fluttering in the wind as they exclaimed in disbelief. Oh God, can someone tell me if this is true? Not only is Yi Chun of the East unscathed, but he also destroyed the 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia in a single blow. Yi Chun was able to destroy 3 Empire of Southeast Asia's deities at once. It must have something to do with the Black Lotus under his feet. But just now, Yi Chun did not use the Black Lotus. Instead, he used a spell. Why is Yi Chun's spell so powerful? Can someone tell me? Holy Divine Fire. That's the Holy Divine Fire of the God of Light. Impossible. Only the God of Light can use the Holy Divine Fire. No one else can master it. Yi Chun is not a Westerner, nor is he a believer of the God of Light. He can't use it. But I've seen people from the Luo denomination use the Holy Divine Fire. It's also a pure white flame. Oh God, what's going on? Could it be that Yi Chun has inherited the God of Light's legacy? This is impossible. Didn't they say that the God of Light sent a clone to kill Yi Chun, but did not succeed in the end? I don't know. Anyway, I feel that Yi Chun is not simple. He must have obtained some amazing treasure and obtained the holy divine fire of the God of Light. That's very likely. Otherwise, why would the God of Light specifically target Yi Chun and try to kill Yi Chun? while the players from various countries were discussing Yi Chen's overbearing and perverted methods. The 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who had been burned by the sun's primordial fire, turned into ashes after letting out a final scream of despair. Then, they disappeared with the wind without a trace. At this moment, a pile of glittering items fell from the sky. When Yi Chen saw this, he raised his left hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air was instantly heard. Then, the items dropped by the 8 main gods of the Empire of Southeast Asia flew directly toward Yi Chen. In the blink of an eye, they all arrived in front of Yi Chen. After taking a look at the dozens of items floating in front of him, Yi Chen could not help but smirk. Damn, this was a good harvest. Apart from the dog-tea storage equipment of the 8 main gods, there were even 64 lottery dice. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, a world announcement sounded. Ding! Player Yi Chen has killed 8 heavenly immortal extraterrestrial deities. Special reward: X8000000 innate attribute points. X*** universal luck points. X** supreme grade spiritual stones. X** 0 innate merit points. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for completing the extraterrestrial deity invasion mission alone and eliminating all 18 invading deities. Special reward: 1 big mystery gift pack. The world announcement was repeated 3 times, and the entire world channel exploded. Where are those idiotic monkeys from the southeast continent? Weren't they hooting just now? Come out and continue hooting. Where are your 8 overgods? Hurry up and come out. Let us take a look. Yeah, didn't those idiots say that Yi of Gojoseon would definitely die if the 8 main gods appeared? Why aren't they continuing to fart? Come out if you have the guts. What 8 main gods? I think it's more like 8 weak chickens. 8 of them can't even be crushed by Yi of Gojoseon with 1 finger. They're just a motley crew. They're so weak. Sigh. Can you expect these monkeys from the southeast continent to summon any powerful characters? These 8 weak chickens must have been summoned with a Herculean effort, right? They're just fodder for Yi of Gojoseon. Yi of Gojoseon is so King awesome. It seems like he's refreshed the highest level of the boss again. CK. It's the heavenly immortal realm. I don't think we have a chance in this lifetime. The rewards this time are so generous. I wonder what's in that mysterious gift bag. Yeah, just the innate attribute points alone are 8 million. If it's given to me, I'll fly into the sky. 800 million supreme grade spiritual stones. Yi of Gojoseon can open a bank now. The most awesome thing is the 8 trillion innate merit points. 8 trillion. Oh, right. What are the innate merit points used for? Sai will never be able to catch up with Yi of Gojoseon. Selling the video of the battle between Yi Chen and the celestial being for 500 million Easter coins. No bargaining. No explanation for the poor. CK. Here comes another black-hearted profiteer. Poor bastard, don't bullshit if you can't afford it. The world channel was abuzz. Yi Chen glanced at it and looked straight at the black package that suddenly appeared in front of him. Mysterious gift pack. What the CK? This thing has never appeared in my previous life. But come to think of it, it was not much different from a treasure chest or a lucky draw. Thinking of this, Yi Chen grabbed the black package in his hand. Ding! Do you want to open the mysterious gift bag? As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chen made his choice without hesitation. Yes, the big mystery gift pack wasn't a lottery die, nor was it a lottery. Naturally, Yi Chen wouldn't save it and not use it. As soon as Yi Chen made his decision, the system's notification sounded again. Ding! The mysterious gift bag has been successfully opened. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for obtaining Immortal Stones, middle grade. X 100 billion and Lucky Draw Dice, X 100,000. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chen's eyes widened. CK. It was 100 billion middle grade Immortal Stones and 100,000 Lucky Draw Dice. Yichen had thought about what the mysterious gift bag would contain. But no matter how much he thought about it, Yichen would never have thought that it would contain 100 billion middle-grade immortal stones and 100,000 lucky draw dice. What was the lottery die? It was, without a doubt, a super treasure chest. Moreover, it was a super treasure chest that would continue to grow stronger as Yi Chen's cultivation level increased. In the end, it would be possible for Yi Chen to obtain a supreme chaos treasure. And how many lucky draw dice did the mysterious gift bag contain? 100,000. What did this mean? It was very simple. Yi Chen had obtained 100,000 chances to obtain a Chaos Supreme treasure. Even if he did not get a Chaos Supreme treasure after 100,000 lucky draws, it was nothing. Yi Chen could not possibly lose out. One had to know that the lucky draw dice always contained items or items that were related to the user's current cultivation level. Therefore, it was very valuable, and it was unimaginably valuable. After all, as Yi Chen's cultivation level increased, there would be fewer items that were suitable for Yi Chen. And Yi Chen would also be able to obtain fewer suitable items like equipment. Under such circumstances, 100,000 dice were equivalent to a super treasure. Moreover, it was a super treasure that even the mighty figures of the untainted world would be jealous of and would even try to snatch it by hook or by crook. One had to know that the Eldritch world was already experiencing a shortage of acquired spiritual treasures. And at the level of connate spiritual treasures, there were even fewer of them. If Yi Chen could obtain 100,000 connate spiritual treasures at once, or even higher level items or items, how could the mighty figures of the Eldritch world not be envious? How could they not be jealous? Damn, others did not even have a single connate spiritual treasure, but Yi Chen had 100,000 of them at once. They would be letting Yi Chen down if they did not fight for it. Of course, Yi Chen's focus was not on the connate spiritual treasures, but the top chaos treasures. Unfortunately, chaos treasures were even rarer. Even Yi Chen could not be sure if he would be able to draw one. But, generally speaking, the lucky draw dice was Yi Chen's chance to obtain a chaos treasure. Yi Chen would not treat it casually. One could say that the value of 100,000 lucky draw dice was extraordinarily great. This referred to the value of the lucky draw dice. If it were 100 billion medium-grade immortal stones, the value would be much lower, but that was only relative. In fact, 100 billion medium-grade immortal stones was not a low value either. Immortal stones were what immortals used to cultivate. Just like how ordinary cultivators could use spirit stones to speed up their cultivation, immortal stones could also speed up the cultivation of immortals. Among them, low grade was the worst, medium grade was slightly better, high grade was the best, and supreme grade was the strongest. 100 billion medium-grade immortal stones could support millions of immortals to quickly cultivate to the Empyrean immortal realm. To the current Yi Chen, this was not something that attracted him at all, because Yi Chen's current gains were enough to support Yi Chen's explosive rise to Empyrean immortal realm, or even golden immortal realm after ascending to Empyrean. At first glance, if 100 billion medium-grade immortal stones were of no use to Yi Chen, there was no need for him to value it so much. But the truth was completely different. Yi Chen walked the path of imperial Tao providence. It was impossible for him to only care about his own improvement and not care about his subordinates and soldiers. As for how to nurture his soldiers and subordinates, the method was very simple. Give them cultivation techniques, let them fight continuously, and then provide them with sufficient resources to cultivate. Natural treasures were cultivation resources, and so were immortal stones. The former was abundant in the Empyrean world. The latter was also abundant in the Empyrean world, but it needed to be mined and a lot of manpower and time. One had to know that although immortal stones were similar to spiritual stones, they were tens of thousands of times more difficult to mine. To mine immortal stones, not only did one have to be an immortal, but one also had to put in a lot of effort to do so. And the immortal stones that could be mined every day were only 3 to 5 pieces, or almost 20 to 30 pieces. It was not impossible to increase the mining speed, but it required the help of a golden immortal. Otherwise, one would only be able to mine a few dozen immortal stones a day. So was Yi Chen willing to spend so much manpower and time to mine immortal stones? How could it be? Damn it, if he wasted all his time on this. How could Yi Chen conquer the world and seize the destiny of the Empyrean world? Therefore, Yi Chen would not waste time and manpower for immortal stones. That was the reason why Yi Chen was so interested in the 100 billion immortal stones from the mysterious gift pack. After all, Yi Chen had obtained 100 billion immortal stones at once, and they were all middle-grade immortal stones. With these middle-grade immortal stones, Yi Chen did not have to worry about the cultivation resources that his subordinates needed to advance to the sky immortal realm. Of course, it was impossible for Yi Chen to only allow his subordinates to use mid-grade immortal stones to cultivate. He would definitely allow his subordinates to use medicinal-type treasures like immortal herbs and divine herbs. After all, immortal stones did not conflict with treasures like immortal and divine medicines. They could be used together to increase the cultivation speed again. In order to achieve this effect, Yi Chen had already decided to plunder the cultivation resources of the Empyrean world in advance. To be more precise, Yi Chen wanted to be the first player to plunder the resources of the Empyrean world. This was because Yi Chen knew very well that although there were countless treasures in the Empyrean world, there were not that many of them that were very precious. Moreover, the formation of any Empyrean world treasure could only be formed after thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of years. If he did not do this, no matter how rich the Empyrean world was, there would be a day when it would be used up, and this time would not be long. This was because the current Empyrean world was not the legendary Empyrean world. Here, there was an additional unstable factor, the players. With the presence of the players, no matter how many treasures there were in the Empyrean world, they would be plundered clean by the locust-like players. In this way, the cultivation resources of the Empyrean world would turn from abundant to poor. Yi Chen was a player, and he had transmigrated here. He knew the nature of the players very well. Therefore, Yi Chen had already made plans to plunder the heavenly materials and earthly treasures of the primordial world and cultivate resources in advance. Then, he would take all the medicinal, heavenly materials and earthly treasures into the small world and use them as the mother of the spiritual plant base. To continuously create was a medicinal, heavenly material and earthly treasure. It was also for this reason that after Yi Chen subdued the howling celestial hound, he did not hesitate to order it to return to the Empyrean world and directly plunder all the unowned treasures and cultivation resources. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the treasures would be used up one day. And if Yi Chen wanted his subordinates and his army to maintain their cultivation speed, in addition to providing cultivation resources that could be consumed, he also needed to provide energy support. And the immortal stones were the energy support. Damn it, being able to get so many good things this time probably has something to do with the outbreak of my Son of Providence. Otherwise, it would be impossible to get so many good things at once, although this harvest was a little crazy. But I like it. At this thought, the corners of Yi Chen's mouth curled up involuntarily. Then, he looked straight at the storage equipment of the 8 lords of the Empire of Southeast Asia. I wonder what's in there. At this thought, Yi Chen shifted his mind and instantly released his enormous divine consciousness. Then, he directly probed into the storage equipment of the 8 lords of the Empire of Southeast Asia. The next second, Yi Chen pursed his lips in disdain. Damn it, the 8 lords, and this was all they had. The 8 lords of the Empire of Southeast Asia added up to a total of 3 million supreme-grade spirit stones, all kinds of elixirs, and a considerable number of treasures. In addition, there were more than a dozen magic treasures and 2 immortal-level swords. In the past, Yi Chen would definitely be excited. But now, Yi Chen did not feel much. The reason for that was because Yi Chen's harvest was simply ridiculously abnormal. A sea of supreme-grade spirit stones, a sea of connate merit, a sea of immortal stones, a sea of lottery dice, and a sea of providence. Of course, even if Yi Chen would not be excited by the collection of the so-called 8 lords, he could not deny the value of these things. To be more precise, a small harvest was not bad. Empire of Southeast Asia, Yin City, Mulberry Hill City, inside the palace hall. At this moment, Thesos the Great and a group of civil and military officials standing in the palace hall were all unbelievably pale. If someone entered the palace hall, they would immediately discover that the emperor and officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia were completely shrouded in fear and despair. How could this be? How could the Yichun be so strong? He killed all 12 deities? Thesos the Great had just received the battle report from the front line. Not only had the vanguard troops collapsed, but even the 12 deities sent to rescue them had also been wiped out by Yichun. When the news came, the entire court was shocked. All the civil and military officials in the court were pale and trembling all over. What should we do? What should we do? Emperor Tessos was at a loss for words, and his speech was a little incoherent. Previously, he had thought that the deities could easily kill Yu of Beech and Yichun of the Great Han Empire. This time, the Empire of Southeast Asia would not only be able to resolve the crisis of being destroyed, but also be able to counterattack the Great Han Empire. However, the cruel reality clearly told him one thing. The deities he relied on were a bunch of F***king trash. They had just been summoned, and not long ago, they were completely wiped out by Yu of Beech and Yichun of the Great Han Empire. As soon as Thesos the Great finished speaking, all the civil and military officials in the court looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. They also wanted to know what to do, but they could not think of anything. This was because Prince Yu of Han, who had destroyed 4 countries in a row, was really too F***king sick. He even killed the deities in such a simple and violent way. In the face of such an existence, how could they think of a solution? Seeing that none of the civil and military officials in the hall spoke, Thesos the Great's anger, which had arisen from fear, exploded. In the next second, Thesos the Great roared angrily. "Say something, all of you. What should we do now? What should we do?" "I suggest that we surrender to King Yu Yi." When a civil official heard this, he clenched his teeth, stepped forward, and said in a submissive manner, "No, we can't surrender. Yichun never leaves anyone alive when he destroys a country. You all saw the previous battle. Did anyone come back alive? If we don't surrender, we still have a chance to live. But if we surrender, we will definitely die." A military official hurriedly stepped forward to stop this suicidal decision. "We can't fight, and we can't surrender. Then how do you think we should deal with this?" Thesos the Great asked the civil officials in a sobbing tone. However, at this moment, no one could give him a satisfactory answer. After a long time, an old official stepped forward and said, "Now, we have to fight to the death. The only thing we can do now is to fight with our lives on the line. Even if we die, let us die with some dignity." Upon hearing this, Thesos the Great slumped back onto the dragon throne. In fact, Thesos the Great knew that he had no other choice. However, he still wanted to struggle. This was because he really did not want to die. Unfortunately, the outcome was not what he wanted. After a moment of silence, the great emperor gave the order to fight to the death. At the same time, Thesos the Great had his own coffin prepared. He wanted to die with dignity. He did not want to die like a coward. On the battlefield, after Yichun kept all the items in his small world, he immediately ordered the reincarnation Immortal City's army to continue the attack. At this moment, the remaining 5 million Empire of Southeast Asia players on the battlefield had lost their fighting spirit. They were no longer as arrogant as before. Upon realizing that the reincarnation Immortal City's army was on the move again, the Empire of Southeast Asia players fled without hesitation. They wanted to be as brave as when they reprimanded Yichun for cheating on the World Channel. Unfortunately, they could not do it. The only thing they could do was to flee with all their might. Otherwise, they would definitely be killed by the reincarnation Immortal City's army. When the veteran General Zagusos saw the Empire of Southeast Asia players fleeing for their lives, he let out a long sigh and chose to commit suicide. Seeing this, the remaining native soldiers hurriedly fled with the players. Nobody wanted to die. Be it the natives or the players, nobody wanted to die. Unfortunately, there were no natives or players who could escape from the Reincarnation Immortal City's army at this moment. After a long chase, the Reincarnation Immortal City's army wiped out all the Empire of Southeast Asia players and natives who were fleeing. Then, they arrived at Senga Hill. Chapter 1133. At this moment, the native soldiers on the wall of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia looked ferocious and crazy. They did not look like they had just lost a battle. It was not difficult to understand why they would behave this way, because they knew that the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia had been killed. They also knew about Yi Qin's cruel order to kill them all. Since the Empire of Southeast Asia was doomed and they would die anyway, they might as well choose a dignified way to die in battle. If they were lucky enough, they might even be able to kill a few of the Reincarnation Immortal City's soldiers as scapegoats. This was the true thought of all the Empire of Southeast Asia soldiers. It was precisely because the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia had this thought that they would show such a look and such an expression. The arrival of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army quickly alerted the general and deputy general guarding the city. Soon, all the soldiers on the wall rushed to their respective positions under the urgent orders of the officers. Outside the city, 2,410,000 soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City stepped on the sand and dust in the sky with a strong, murderous intent. Rumble, rumble, thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The Reincarnation Immortal City's army charged again and again without slowing down. On the wall of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia, the general guarding the city of the Empire of Southeast Asia was stunned when he saw that the Reincarnation Immortal City's army was made up of cavalrymen. At this moment, the deputy general looked at the general with a puzzled expression and asked, "General, is you of Gojoseon of the Great Han Empire planning to use cavalrymen to attack the city?" "I think so." The general guarding the city nodded in confusion. Then his eyes lit up. Everyone knew that it was impossible to use cavalrymen to attack the city. The general guarding the city of the Empire of Southeast Asia also thought so. It was precisely because he thought of this fact that there was a look of joy in his eyes. Just as the general of the capital of the Empire of Southeast Asia showed a look of joy, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Su Chu, and other famous historical generals did not hesitate to give the order of free range. At this moment, the soldiers of the Reincarnation Immortal City drew their bows and aimed at the natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia on the city wall of another capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. In the next second, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless arrows rose from the army of the Reincarnation Immortal City and flew toward the city walls of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. In the next second, the sound of bodies being shot through could be heard everywhere. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The soldiers on the city walls of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia were shot to death on the spot. Some of them were even nailed to the ground. In an instant, the soldiers on the city walls of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia were wiped out. At the same time, shrill howls of agony followed closely behind. These lucky natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia were only shot in the arms or legs. They did not die on the spot. If it were others, they might be surprised by this. However, these natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia did not have such thoughts at all. This was because they were very clear about one thing. Yu of Gojoseon of the Great Han Empire could easily destroy the deities of the Empire of Southeast Asia. If he wanted to destroy the Empire of Southeast Asia, it would be very easy. To be more precise, they were certain that it was only a matter of time before the Southeast Continent's Imperial Council was destroyed. And now, they were even more certain of this judgment. Damn it! The range of the Reincarnation Immortal City's army's arrows was too long and terrifyingly powerful. They could even penetrate the city walls. Under such circumstances, they still wanted to fight with their lives on the line. Who were they going to fight with? They would be shot to death before they could even get close. It was also because of this that the madness in the eyes of the natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia was quickly replaced by despair, regardless of whether they were injured or not. There was no way to fight, no way to fight. This was a cruel fact that they had to accept. Under such circumstances, other than despair, they had no other choice. The general of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who had a hopeful look in his eyes just now, was stunned when he saw his soldiers falling to the rain of arrows. Then he slumped against the city gate tower. Although he was mentally prepared to die in battle, such a one-sided massacre was not what he wanted to see. Whoosh, 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 the dense rain of arrows blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Wave after wave of arrows appeared and landed on the city wall of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Regardless of whether the natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia were holding up their shields, leaning against the battlements of the city wall, or lying on the city wall, they were either shot to death on the spot or nailed to the ground. Those who were lucky had their bodies pierced by arrows that were not fatal. Then they let out miserable cries of despair. Oh, the rain of arrows blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Blood began to splatter everywhere and dyed the entire city wall red. The strong smell of blood began to surge. The wails of death and the screams of despair kept echoing. This was war. It was either kill or be killed. There was no sympathy, no pity, only merciless killing. Rumble, rumble, thousands of horses galloped and the earth rumbled. The army of the reincarnation immortal city charged again and again. Soon, they arrived at the gate of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and other generals took the lead and raised their weapons in unison. Then, they smashed the gate of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Bang, bang, bang. After a few sounds, the gate of the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia exploded in an instant. Then, debris splashed all over the sky. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, Li Yuanba, and other generals saw this and smiled at each other. Then, they shouted in unison, "Kill all of them!" Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and other generals took the lead and rushed into Mulberry Hill City. Kill! 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 Then they saw the army of the reincarnation immortal city following closely behind Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba. Then they rushed into Mulberry Hill City. At this moment, there were tens of millions of native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia in Mulberry Hill City. Although they tried their best to resist and tried their best to drag a soldier of the reincarnation immortal city down with them, unfortunately, there was no change in the outcome. At this moment, the tyrannical strength of the army of the reincarnation immortal city was displayed in Mulberry Hill City, the capital city of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Sweeping all the way, the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were killed one after another. Blood continued to gush out, accumulating more and more. Then it dyed every single street red. The army of the reincarnation immortal city completely dominated the battlefield. They wantonly killed the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia in the city. The surging saber light shredded everything here. Faced with the invincible defense of the reincarnation immortal city, the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all in despair and rushed to their deaths. They shouted crazily and rushed toward the army of the reincarnation immortal city with a mentality of death. Unfortunately, they were soon turned into minced meat under the hooves of the horses. Time passed slowly. The corpses of the soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were piled up all over the streets. All the roads in the city were dyed red with their blood. Countless small streams of blood gathered into small streams and then filled up all the ditches in the city. Not long after, the huge Mulberry Hill City had become a huge slaughterhouse. Chapter 1134. Corpses were strewn all over the place, and the smell of blood filled the air. The aura of death in Sangahil, the capital of the Empire of Southeast Asia, grew stronger and stronger as the army of the reincarnation Immortal City slaughtered their way through. While the native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were screaming in despair, the Emperor and officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia were in a mess. Great Emperor, now that the enemy has entered the city, I suggest we run away. One of the officials suggested in a panic. Run? Where should we run to? How? Theseus the Great was at a loss. He could not think of any use in running away, let alone where they could run to. Great Emperor, there's a saying in the East, where there's life, there's hope. As long as we escape, we can still find a chance to restore our empire in the future. But if you die today, we won't have another chance. Yes, please reconsider, Great Emperor. Think carefully about the future of the Empire of Southeast Asia. The officials chimed in and tried to persuade him. Obviously, they did not want to die. Otherwise, they would not have tried to persuade Theseus. After listening to the advice of his officials, Theseus let out a long sigh and said, "If that's the case, then order people to prepare." Yes. Reincarnation Immortal City. Yi Chun, who had been using his divine sense to lock on to the capital of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Sangahil, looked at the location of the Sangahil Palace and curled his lips in disdain. You want to run? You're dreaming in Sangahil Palace. The army of the reincarnation Immortal City moved quickly. Before long, the tens of millions of native soldiers of the Empire of Southeast Asia were all killed. After that, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and the other generals led their armies and rushed toward the palace. However, when the army of the reincarnation Immortal City entered the palace, they realized that there was no one there. When Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and Li Yuanba were about to order their subordinates to search for the whereabouts of the emperor and the officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia, the space beside the army of the reincarnation Immortal City suddenly twisted. Then, they saw the emperor and the officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia, who had escaped from the imperial palace through the secret passage, appear here. If he did not kill the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia, the game would not give him any rewards. Yi Chun would also not be able to obtain all of the providence of the Empire of Southeast Asia. Therefore, it was impossible for Yi Chun to let him escape. Yi Chun glanced at the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia, whose face was dejected and whose eyes were filled with despair. He looked straight at Guan Yu and shouted through telepathy, "What are you doing? Kill." "Yes, my lord." When Guan Yu heard Yi Chun's order, he hurriedly bowed in the direction of the reincarnation Immortal City. After that, he ordered Theseus and the hundreds of officials of the Empire of Southeast Asia to be escorted to the largest square in the city of Sangukil, where they were prepared to be executed. Before they died, Theseus the Great and the officials who were afraid of death knelt in front of the executioners and begged for their lives. The executioners were unmoved. During the execution, players from all over the world came to watch. The scene was packed with people. Among them, the Eastern players were the most elated. Yu of Gojoseon is so domineering. He even wants to kill the emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia. He really doesn't want to leave anyone alive. From now on, the Empire of Southeast Asia will be a province in the East. Where are those monkeys from the Southeast continent? Why didn't they come to save their lord? Who dares to come over now? Unless they're evil maniacs. Haha, today is really fun. While I was cleaning up the battlefield, I picked up the highest grade equipment until my hands went limp. Yeah, me too. Sigh, I wasn't prepared this time. If I knew this would happen, I would have collected a few more storage equipment. Tisk, that's easy for you to say. Don't you know the price of storage equipment now? If it was so easy to collect, I would have brought tens of thousands of storage rings with me. You're right. There's no supply for storage equipment in the market now. Yu of Gojoseon's actions are too fast. He destroyed so many countries in a day. Our Eastern players who have nothing to do have all come to collect corpses. In order to collect more equipment, the prices of storage equipment in the market have been inflated to sky-high prices by these people. Also, other than storage equipment, all the equipment and resources have been greatly reduced in price. Many of the equipment and resources that were hard to get in the past have become cheap now. Yeah, that's why I'm only collecting high-grade items now. Otherwise, I won't be able to earn back the money I spent on storage equipment. Sigh, me too. The Western players who were watching the scene were also discussing spiritedly. Yi-chan is too ruthless. Not only does he want to destroy countries, but he also wants to kill all their people. Yeah, I'm a little scared now. What if he goes to our country? Our country didn't provoke him. You probably won't go there, right? It's hard to say. Don't forget what happened to the Eight-Nation Alliance back then. Seeing that it was time, Guan Yu waved his hand and gave the order to the soldiers who were carrying out the executions. Execute. Yes. The soldiers who received the order raised the large swords in their hands and slashed at the necks of Thesos the Great and the hundreds of officials. Whoosh! Kacha! The soldiers carried out the executions in unison. Hundreds of heads fell to the ground. At this time, the Eastern players who were watching the scene immediately burst into loud cheers. The crowd was in an uproar. Ha ha ha, this is awesome. We should have killed all these monkeys long ago. Yi Yu of Gojoseon is mighty. You have conquered another country for the East. Those who offend the East will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, well done. I will always support you. As for the Southeast Continent players, they were already scared out of their wits. None of them dared to continue being cocky or boastful. It could be said that powerlessness was the only feeling in the hearts of the Empire of Southeast Asia players. In the City Lord's mansion of the Reincarnation Immortal City, Yi-chan raised his eyebrows when he saw that the Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia had been executed. The Empire of Southeast Asia had been destroyed. Just as Yi-chan thought of this, a world announcement was heard. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chan for killing the Emperor of the Empire of Southeast Asia, Thesos the Great. The reward is innate attribute points x 1,000, supreme spiritual stones x 10,000, and providence points x 1,000,000. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chan for conquering the entire territory of the Empire of Southeast Asia. You have obtained all the providence of the Empire of Southeast Asia. At the same time, you are rewarded with innate attribute points x 1,000, providence points x 1,000,000, supreme spiritual stones x 10,000. Ding! Because player Yi-chan performed outstandingly in this battle, you are rewarded with a super gift pack x1. The entire world channel exploded with activity once the world announcement was over. All the Eastern players began to discuss enthusiastically. Ha! Yi Yu of Gojoseon has destroyed another country. The territory of the East is getting bigger and bigger. We won't have to worry about our safety when we go to the Empire of Southeast Asia in the future. Chapter 1135. Those who offend the East will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Those monkeys from the Southeast continent are always showing off in front of us. This time, we'll kill every single one of them. Yi Yu of Gojoseon, good job. Yeah, those monkeys should have been killed long ago. I'm so happy today. It's so satisfying. The Southeast continent is now the territory of the East. If you see those monkeys in the future, don't let them go. The players from the Empire of Southeast Asia who were hiding in the dark could not help but scold back after seeing these comments. Pig, don't be so smug. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Just you wait. One day, I'll kill all of you pigs. Oh? You're still so arrogant after your country is destroyed? Son of a bitch, where are you hiding? Do you dare to tell me your location? I'll come and meet you now. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. I think it's hopeless even after thousands of years, right? Trash, don't let me see you. Otherwise, I'll kill you every time I see you. At the same time, the players from the Western countries also became nervous. Yi-chan has already destroyed 5 countries. If this continues, it'll be our turn sooner or later. Who can stop him? It can't be. I don't think Yi Chun has any intention of attacking us. Idiot. It doesn't mean that he won't attack us in the future. Don't you have any sense of crisis? Then what should we do? Yi Chun is so strong. Who can resist him? Looks like the Luo denomination has to step in. Are you sure the Luo denomination will work? Sigh, we'll just have to try everything we can. The world channel was in an uproar. Yi Chun glanced at it and sneered. Then he looked straight at Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, and the other generals and sent a telepathic message. Build capital temple. Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Huang Zhong, and the other generals were stunned when they heard this. Then, they hurriedly bowed in the direction of the reincarnation immortal city and said loudly, "Yes, my lord." Building the capital temple was something that only generals would do. It was used to intimidate and praise one's achievements. This kind of behavior was somewhat against the harmony of the heavens, so very few generals would do such a thing. However, the so-called harming the harmony of the heavens referred to attacking one's own race. There was nothing excessive about doing this to a foreign race. To be more precise, Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and the other generals, although they did not expect that their lord, Yi Chun, would give such an order, they did not contradict it. This wasn't because they were die-hard loyalists, but because Yi Chun's orders were directed at the foreign races, so there was no need for them to care. As Zhao Yun, Dian Wei, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Huang Zhong spoke, they ordered their soldiers to collect the corpses. At first, the Eastern players were confused. They did not know what the reincarnation Immortal City's army was going to do. It was not until a courageous and respectful player asked a reincarnation Immortal City soldier that they received an answer. After confirming that the reincarnation Immortal City's army was going to use the corpses of the natives of the Empire of Southeast Asia to build the capital temple, the Eastern players did not hesitate to help. Damn, the Eastern players had suffered a lot at the hands of these small countries. Moreover, countless of their own race had been tortured and killed. It would be nonsense if they still talked about righteousness and morality. Many hands make light work. Under the combined efforts of the reincarnation Immortal City's army and millions of Eastern players, 10 huge pyramids made of the corpses of the Empire of Southeast Asia were quickly completed. These 10 gigantic pyramids were completely made of corpses. They were thousands of meters tall and stood around ancient Sangu Hill City. It was a daunting sight. Once the pyramids were completed, players from all countries felt threatened by Yi Chun. Some people started to secretly form an alliance to fight against Yi Chun. Yi Chun naturally did not know about this. However, even if Yi Chun knew, he would not take it to heart. It did not matter if they formed an alliance or fought separately. Yi Chun was going to conquer the world and not give the foreign players a chance to survive. Of course, this was not important. The important thing was that Yi Chun's attention was focused on the super gift pack. Looking at the super gift pack in his hand, Yi Chun raised his eyebrows. This was the final reward for this war. He wondered what it would be. Thinking of this, Yi Chun opened the super gift pack with anticipation. What is this? As soon as the super gift pack was opened, Yi Chun realized that there was only a gray stone in the super gift pack. Not only that, the stone did not have any information. Picking up the football-sized stone, Yi Chun waited. It seemed to be very light. What is this? Yi Chun studied the stone back and forth several times, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. Although he could not figure out what it was, Yi Chun knew one thing. A stone that appeared as a reward in the world announcement was definitely not something simple. Forget it. I won't look at it. I'll keep it first. I'll think about it later. Thinking of this, Yi Chun kept the stone in his pocket dimension. Great Han Empire, Luoyang Palace Hall. Emperor Lu Hong was discussing state affairs with his ministers. But at this moment, he was interrupted by cheers from outside the hall. Report. Great victory! Great victory! Great victory! The messenger ran and shouted excitedly in the direction of the palace hall. What great victory! Could it be Yi Yu of Gojoseon? When Lu Hong heard this voice, his eyes lit up. Then, he looked straight outside the palace hall. Not long after, the messenger ran into the palace hall in a hurry. When he saw Lu Hong, he immediately knelt and reported, "Your Majesty, great victory in the southeast continent. Yi Yu of Gojoseon has completely conquered the empire of Southeast Asia. The empire of Southeast Asia has become our territory in the east." When the ministers and Lu Hong heard this news, their first reaction was not joy. Instead, they were collectively stunned. How long had it been? The fifth nation was destroyed? Wasn't this speed too terrifying? The ministers were stunned. Lu Hong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, did not know whether to be happy or not. After being stunned for a few seconds, the ministers in the palace hall came back to their senses. Then, they immediately reported the good news to Lu Hong. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Everyone, please rise. The Great Han Empire's achievements today are inseparable from everyone's efforts." Ha ha! When Lu Hong heard this, he was instantly overjoyed. Then, he waved his hand and laughed heartily. No matter what, now that the Great Han Empire had gained a large territory, nothing could make him happier than this. Just as Lu Hong was laughing excitedly, an elderly civil official suddenly stepped forward and bowed to Lu Hong. "Your Majesty, this old subject has something to say. I wonder if I should say it?" "We pardon you. Speak." "Thank you, Your Majesty. This subject thinks that although Yi Chun has opened up a large territory for the Great Han Empire in a short period of time, as the saying goes, one should not bite off more than one can chew. The Great Han Empire does not seem to be able to allocate so much manpower and resources to manage these territories in a short period of time. Therefore, this subject presumptuously asks Your Majesty, is it possible to have Yi Yu of Gojoseon temporarily stop his plans to attack other nations? Give the people of the Great Han Empire some time to recuperate before making any plans. Your Majesty, this subject also thinks that this is reasonable. Moreover, Yi Yu of Gojoseon has been winning battles consecutively. His subordinates are becoming more and more powerful. This is not a good thing for the imperial power. Your Majesty, please reconsider. These words are correct. This subject thinks that Yi Yu of Gojoseon's authority is too great. If this goes on, I fear that it will lead to disaster. Your Majesty, although Yi Yu of Gojoseon has made outstanding contributions, allowing his army to expand without limit is definitely not a good thing. This subject presumptuously asks Your Majesty to restrain this. This is also a form of protection for Yi Yu of Gojoseon. In an instant, the court was filled with unfavorable words for Yi Chun. Lu Hong also did not expect that Yi Chun's victory would cause so much backlash. He originally did not have any thoughts about Yi Chun, but after hearing the words of these officials, he couldn't help but have some misgivings about Yi Chun, just as he was having a headache over how to respond to the remonstrances of the officials. Head eunuch Zhang Rang, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. "I think that all of you are simply jealous of the wise and the capable." Zhang Rang had always thought that Yi Chun, this Prince Yu of Han, was a powerful ally of the eunuchs. Thus, when Zhang Rang opened his mouth, he was not polite at all. "Let me ask all of you, when our Great Han Empire was invaded by the barbarians, where were all of you? When the barbarians' army was burning, killing, and pillaging our Great Han Empire, where were all of you? When our Great Han Empire's people were kidnapped by those barbarians and sold as slaves, where were all of you?" For a moment, all the officials in the court were speechless. No one could answer him. Seeing that the situation was not bad, Zhang Rang continued to defend Yi Chun. "What's wrong? Now that His Majesty has finally found a loyal and devoted son-in-law, the Great Han Empire has finally produced an invincible prince that is rarely seen in 10,000 years. He is opening up new territory for the Great Han Empire and establishing a foundation for the Great Han Empire. Are all of you mediocre people unable to tolerate him? That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.